They laughed when he walked into that boardroom. A single dad in a thrift store suit, no college degree, just desperation and a 5-year-old daughter waiting at home. The interview panel had already made their decision, reject him before he even sat down. But when their $20 million project exploded in real time, when their so-called experts stood frozen and useless, Alex Rowan saw what they couldn't. One glance at their screens, one insight that would change everything. This is the story of the man they underestimated, the father who refused to fail, and the moment that proved genius doesn't need a diploma. Stay until the end and comment what city you're watching from. I want to see how far this story travels. The fluorescent lights of Cole & Stratton Analytics hummed with the kind of sterile indifference that matched the faces staring back at Alex Rowan. He sat in a chair that felt 2 sizes too small, his thrift store blazer, the only one he owned, riding up uncomfortably at the shoulders. The fabric had seen better days, maybe better years, and he knew it. They knew it too. 3 people sat across from him at the obsidian conference table, their expressions ranging from mild boredom to thinly veiled disdain. To his left sat Grant Hutchins, the senior HR director, a man whose perfectly tailored navy suit probably cost more than Alex's entire month's rent. Grant's fingers drummed impatiently against a leather portfolio, each tap a metronome counting down the seconds until this formality would be over. To the right was Olivia Chen, lead data scientist, her designer glasses perched on her nose as she scrolled through something on her tablet, without even pretending to pay attention to him. Her silk blouse caught the light as she moved, everything about her screaming Ivy League and 6-figure salary. And in the center, like a judge presiding over a sentencing, sat Harris Tremaine, VP of Operations. Silver-haired, stone-faced, with the kind of cold eyes that had probably crushed 1,000 dreams before breakfast. Alex's resume, a single page printed at the public library, sat untouched in front of Harris. The corner was already curling. "So, Mr. Rowan," Grant began, not bothering to hide the condescension dripping from every syllable, "walk us through your educational background." The pause before educational hit like a slap. Alex straightened in his chair, trying to summon confidence he didn't feel. "I don't have a traditional 4-year degree," he said, keeping his voice steady. "I completed 2 years at community college before you dropped out," Olivia interrupted, still not looking up from her tablet. "Yes, we can see that. I had to," Alex continued, refusing to let the shame creep into his voice. "My daughter was born, and her mother left. I became a single parent. I needed to work." "How noble," Harris said flatly, finally picking up the resume with 2 fingers as if it might contaminate him. "And these self-taught skills you've listed, Python, SQL, statistical modeling, you learned all this from YouTube videos and library books?" "Yes, sir. And through practical application, I've built predictive models for what?" Grant cut in with a sharp laugh. "Your fantasy football league? A lemonade stand?" Olivia finally looked up, a smirk playing at her lips. "This position requires a master's degree minimum, preferably a PhD. You understand that, right? We're talking about handling multi-million-dollar analytics projects, client retention strategies for Fortune 500 companies, not hobby projects." Alex felt heat rising in his chest, but he pushed it down. He'd practiced for this. He'd known it would be hard. He'd prepared answers, case studies he'd worked on during Lily's nap times, models he'd built after she went to bed, teaching himself until 2 a.m. before his shift at the warehouse started at 6. "I understand the stakes," Alex said quietly. "And I know I don't have the credentials you're looking for on paper, but I do have the skills. If you'd look at the portfolio I submitted—" "We looked at it," Harris interrupted, dropping the resume back onto the table like discarded trash. "It's adequate for an enthusiast. But this is Cole & Stratton Analytics. We are the gold standard in this industry. Our team consists of graduates from MIT, Stanford, Carnegie Mellon. Our entry-level analysts have more credentials than your entire trajectory." The word trajectory came out like an insult. Alex's jaw tightened. Through the glass walls of the conference room, he could see the main floor of Cole & Stratton, rows of sleek desks, multiple monitors at each station, young professionals in expensive casual wear typing away, catered lunch being set up in the break area. This was a different world, a world he'd been trying to break into for 3 years, sending out hundreds of applications, getting dozens of rejections, and finally landing this interview, only to be dismissed before he'd barely said 10 words. "Mr. Rowan," Grant said, closing his leather portfolio with theatrical finality, "I'm going to be frank with you. We brought you in today as a courtesy. Your application was persistent. 7 times you've applied to various positions here. 7 times. Someone in HR thought we should at least give you a face-to-face rejection so you'd stop." The words hung in the air like poison gas. Alex felt something crack inside his chest, not his spirit, that had been tested too many times to break easily, but something else. Hope, maybe. The tiny, desperate hope that had kept him going through another year of night shifts and ramen dinners, of telling Lily they couldn't afford the zoo trip she wanted, of watching her shoes get too small and waiting until they were absolutely falling apart before buying new ones from the discount bin. "I see," Alex said quietly. "Thank you for your time." He started to rise, his cheap chair scraping against the polished floor with an embarrassing screech that made Olivia wince. "One more thing," Harris said, leaning back in his chair with the casual cruelty of someone who enjoyed this part. "A word of advice, Rowan. This industry isn't for people who need second chances. It's for people who got it right the first time. People who made the right choices, went to the right schools, built the right network. You made your choices. Live with them." "I made my choices to take care of my daughter," Alex said, and for the first time an edge crept into his voice. "I'd make them again." "How touching," Grant said dryly. "Best of luck at your next warehouse job, was it?" Alex's hand was on the conference room door when it happened. A sharp electronic shriek cut through the office. Not quite an alarm, but close. The kind of sound that made every head on the floor snap up simultaneously. Multiple computer screens flickered. Then another sound, like a wave. Gasps, then urgent voices, then the rapid-fire clicking of dozens of mice and keyboards. Through the glass, Alex saw people standing up from their desks. Someone shouted. Another person ran toward a cluster of monitors at the far end of the room. "What the hell?" Grant said, standing up. Harris was already moving to the door, yanking it open. The sound of chaos flooded in, phones ringing, people calling out technical jargon Alex recognized. "The pipeline's down. Retention metrics just crashed. Everything's showing error codes." "Is this a drill?" Olivia asked, but her face had gone pale. "There are no drills," Harris snapped, striding out onto the main floor. Alex stood frozen in the doorway, forgotten. Grant and Olivia pushed past him, following Harris toward the center of the crisis. The entire floor had transformed in seconds from quiet productivity to controlled panic. A massive display screen on the far wall, the kind used for presentations and all-hands meetings, had automatically switched to what looked like a system dashboard. Even from 30 feet away, Alex could see the angry red error messages cascading down the screen. Project titles, graphs, metrics, all of it collapsing in real time. And centered at the top of the screen, in letters large enough to read from anywhere in the room, Project Atlas, critical failure. Alex's breath caught. He knew that name. Everyone in the industry knew that name. Project Atlas was legendary. Cole and Stratton's flagship client retention prediction system, the platform that had won them their reputation, that supposedly could predict customer churn with unprecedented accuracy. It had been featured in Forbes, Wired, and the Wall Street Journal. Companies paid millions for access to its insights, and apparently, it had just died. "Someone get me a status report," Harris's voice boomed across the floor. "Where's the Atlas team? Now!" A cluster of data scientists rushed to a bank of monitors, their fingers flying across keyboards. Alex watched as Grant and Olivia joined another group, all of them staring at screens filled with code and error logs. He should leave. He should walk out right now, go pick up Lily from Ms. Patterson's apartment where she was being babysat, go home to their one-bedroom place where the heat didn't work right and the neighbors were too loud. He should accept what he'd known all along, that this world wasn't for people like him, but his feet didn't move. Instead, his eyes tracked to the main display screen, to the cascade of errors and the fragments of data visualizations that were still partially visible beneath the red warning messages. Years of self-taught analysis, of staying up until his eyes burned studying statistical patterns, of building models on borrowed laptops in public libraries, All of it hummed to life in his brain. Something was wrong with what he was seeing. Not just the system failure, that was obvious, but something else. Something in the data itself, in the fragments still visible on the screen. "The client's going to murder us," someone said nearby, voice high with panic. "Drake's going to pull the entire contract." "Samuel Drake?" another voice responded. "Oh God, he's already been threatening to walk. If Atlas is down, it's not just down," a third voice cut in, belonging to a young analyst with sweat already beading on his forehead. "The historical data is corrupted. Months of retention metrics are showing anomalies. We might have been giving them bad projections for—" "Shut up," Harris roared. "Conference room, senior team only, now!" He meant the main executive conference room, the one with actual wooden doors instead of glass, the one where the real decisions got made. The senior team started moving that direction, a dozen people in expensive clothes with expensive degrees rushing to save their expensive project. Alex stood in the doorway of the interview room, still invisible. His interview was over. He'd been rejected. He should leave. But his eyes stayed locked on that screen. And that's when he saw it. It was just a glimpse, a fragment of a data table still visible in one corner of the display before someone pulled up another error log over it. But Alex's brain processed it in the way it always did, the way it had since he was a kid winning mental math competitions before life got complicated, instantly, instinctively, understanding patterns that others missed. The retention rate shown in that fragment, 91.3%. But something about the supporting metrics underneath it, the engagement frequency, the account activity timestamps, the demographic distributions, they didn't match. The numbers didn't align with a 91% retention rate. They couldn't. The math was wrong. Not just wrong. Impossible. His heart started hammering. His hands, which had been shaking with humiliation 5 minutes ago, steadied. Without thinking, he stepped out of the interview room and walked toward the main display. "Hey," someone said as he passed. "Interviews are over. You need to—" But Alex wasn't listening. He was moving on autopilot, his entire focus narrowing to the screen. Someone had pulled up a broader view of the Atlas system architecture, probably trying to isolate the failure point. Error messages still flashed, but beneath them, Alex could see the data pipeline structure, the way information flowed from source databases through processing stages to final output. And there it was, so obvious he almost laughed. "The duplication," he said out loud, not meaning to. "What?" The person next to him, one of the junior analysts, turned. "Who are you?" "The duplication," Alex repeated, louder this time, pointing at the screen. "You're double counting. Look, the user engagement table is joining to the account activity log on 2 different keys. Every time a user logs in from multiple devices, you're creating duplicate records in the retention calculation. Your 91% retention rate isn't real. It's inflated." The junior analyst stared at him like he'd started speaking in tongues. No. That's been reviewed by—" "It's wrong," Alex said, his voice growing stronger. "And I can prove it. If you just let me—" "Security!" Grant's voice cut through the chaos. He was striding back from the direction of the executive conference room, his face red. What is he still doing here? "I found your problem," Alex said, turning to face him. The entire floor seemed to still for a moment, all eyes suddenly on the poorly dressed man who'd been rejected minutes ago. "Your retention metrics are wrong. Have been for months, probably. You're double-counting users, inflating your accuracy. The system didn't just fail. It was built on faulty logic." The silence that followed was deafening. Grant's face went from red to purple. "You have got to be kidding me. You, the guy who couldn't even finish community college. You think you found a flaw that our PhD team missed?" "I don't think," Alex said quietly. "I know. Look at the schema. Look at the joins. It's right there." "This is insane," Olivia said, appearing from the crowd. "Grant, get him out of here. We have an actual crisis to deal with." "Let me look at it," Alex said, desperation creeping into his voice now. 5 minutes. Just give me 5 minutes with the data and I can show you—" "Absolutely not," Harris said, emerging from the executive conference room with several other senior leaders. His face was stone. "You were rejected for the interview. You have no clearance, no authority, and no credibility. Security, escort him out. Now." Two security guards started moving through the crowd. Alex's mind raced. This was it. His one chance to prove he belonged here, to show that skills mattered more than credentials, that he could do this work, and they were literally throwing him out. But then a voice cut through the chaos. A voice Alex hadn't heard yet. Wait. Everyone froze. The crowd parted, and for the first time, Alex saw her. Miranda Cole, CEO of Cole and Stratton Analytics. She'd been in the executive conference room, he realized. She must have heard everything. Miranda was in her 50s, with steel gray hair pulled back in a severe bun and a charcoal pantsuit that probably cost more than Alex's car, if he'd had a car. But it was her eyes that stopped him, sharp, calculating, missing nothing. She walked forward slowly, her heels clicking on the polished floor, until she stood directly in front of Alex. You said duplication, Miranda said. Her voice was quiet, but it commanded absolute attention. Explain. Exactly. 30 seconds. Alex's mouth went dry. Every eye in the office was on him. The security guards had stopped, waiting. Grant, Olivia, and Harris were all staring, their expressions ranging from rage to disbelief. 30 seconds to save everything. Your user engagement metrics join the account table to the activity log using both username and device ID as keys, Alex said, words tumbling out rapid fire. But users log in from multiple devices, phone, tablet, laptop. Each device creates a separate join record. When you calculate retention, you're counting the same user multiple times. The more devices they use, the more they're duplicated in your retention figures. It makes your system look more accurate than it is because you're counting loyal users 3 or 4 times each while counting churned users only once. Your real retention rate is probably 30 to 40 points lower than what you're reporting. The silence stretched for 5 seconds. 10, 15. Miranda's expression didn't change. Then she turned to Harris. Pull up the schema, she said. Miranda, this is... Harris started. Pull up the schema. Someone scrambled to a keyboard. A few clicks later, the massive display showed the database structure Alex had described. Tables, fields, join relationships. The technical architecture that powered Project Atlas. Miranda studied it for a long moment. Then she turned to one of her senior data scientists, a woman with a terrified expression. Dr. Patterson, Miranda said. Hypothesis. If this duplication exists, what would be the actual impact on our retention calculations? Dr. Patterson, who probably had 3 degrees and a wall of awards, stared at the screen, her face growing progressively paler. Her lips moved silently as she traced the data flows, running calculations in her head. Oh my God, she whispered. He's right. The join is creating... We're generating duplicate user records on every multi-device session. That means... Oh my God, our retention figures would be inflated, Miranda finished coldly. By how much? I would need to run the actual numbers, but if the average user logs in from 2.3 devices as our metrics show, then we're potentially counting them multiple times across the retention calculation window, which means... Dr. Patterson's voice was shaking now. Our reported 91% retention could actually be 68%, maybe lower. The number hung in the air like a death sentence. 68% instead of 91%. A 23-point gap. In the world of multi-million-dollar analytics contracts, that wasn't just an error. That was catastrophic. That was the kind of mistake that ended companies. Jesus Christ, someone whispered. Harris looked like he might vomit. Grant had gone completely white. Olivia was staring at Alex like he'd just pulled a grenade pin. And Miranda was still looking at the screen, her expression unreadable. How long has this been in production? She asked quietly. 18 months, Dr. Patterson whispered. We've been reporting these metrics to clients for 18 months. Another silence. This one felt like standing on the edge of a cliff. Then Miranda turned back to Alex. She studied him with those sharp eyes, taking in the cheap blazer, the worn shoes, the obvious signs of someone who'd been fighting life with both hands for years. What's your name? She asked. Alex Rowan, ma'am. Mr. Rowan, you just identified a flaw that my team, my very expensive, very credentialed team, missed for 18 months. A flaw that may have cost this company, she paused, doing mental math, conservatively, $20 million in overestimated value and potential client lawsuits. Alex didn't know what to say to that, so he said nothing. Miranda turned to Harris. What was the interview decision? We rejected him, Harris said stiffly. He doesn't have the requisite education, or I don't care what he doesn't have, Miranda interrupted. I care what he does have. And what he has is the ability to spot in 30 seconds what your entire department missed for 18 months. She turned back to Alex. Mr. Rowan, I'm going to make you an offer. And I suggest you listen very carefully because I do not make offers like this. Alex's heart was hammering so hard he could hear it in his ears. You have 72 hours, Miranda continued. 3 days. I want you to rebuild the Atlas retention model from the ground up. Fix the duplication error. Verify the calculations. Produce accurate historical metrics for the past 18 months. Everything documented, everything transparent. Miranda, Grant sputtered, you can't be serious. He has no clearance, no access. No, he'll have access, Miranda said without looking at Grant. Full system access. Whatever he needs. She locked eyes with Alex again. If you succeed, if you deliver a working model that I can show to our clients and say, this is what we're fixing, then I'll give you a position here, a real one, not some pity hire, not an internship, a full data engineer position with commensurate salary. And if I fail? Alex asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Then you walk away having tried. But Mr. Rowan, I need to be clear about something. Our biggest client, Samuel Drake, CEO of Titan Industries, is flying in personally for an emergency meeting in 72 hours. He's threatening to pull a contract worth $18 million annually and drag us through the courts for fraudulent reporting. If I don't have an answer for him, if I don't have a fixed system to present, this company will be finished. So understand, this isn't just your future on the line. It's everyone's in this building. She gestured around at the 100-plus employees watching this conversation unfold. 72 hours, Mr. Rowan. Do we have a deal? Alex thought of Lily. 5 years old, gap-toothed smile, favorite stuffed rabbit named Mr. Carrots. Lily, who needed new shoes and winter coats and birthday parties with actual cake instead of boxed brownies with candles stuck in them. Lily, who asked him every night, "Did you get the good job today, Daddy?" and believed him when he said, "Soon, sweetheart, soon." 72 hours to save everything, or lose everything trying. We have a deal, see, Alex said. Miranda nodded once, sharp and final. Then she turned to the assembled staff. Dr. Patterson, set Mr. Rowan up with a workstation and full system credentials. Everyone else, back to your stations. We have 72 hours to save this company, and standing around gawking isn't going to help. The crowd dispersed slowly, people returning to their desks with stunned expressions, whispering to each other. Alex caught fragments of conversations. Did that really just happen? Who is that guy? This is insane. Dr. Patterson approached him cautiously, like he might bite. Mr. Rowan, if you'll follow me. As Alex moved to follow her, he passed Grant, Olivia, and Harris. The looks on their faces ranged from fury to disbelief to something that might have been fear. Grant leaned in close as Alex passed. You're going to fail, he hissed, quiet enough that only Alex could hear. And when you do, we're going to make sure everyone knows it was you who killed this company, not the system. You. Alex met his eyes and said nothing. There was nothing to say. Grant was right about one thing. If Alex failed, he would be the scapegoat. The unqualified nobody who'd been given a chance and blown it spectacularly. But if he succeeded... Dr. Patterson led him across the floor to a workstation in the corner, a temporary desk that looked like it was usually used for overflow or visiting consultants. 2 monitors, decent keyboard, standard office chair. It looked like heaven. I'll get your credentials set up, Dr. Patterson said, her voice still shaky. You'll have full database access within the hour. And Mr. Rowan, for what it's worth, what you spotted? That was brilliant. We should have caught it. I should have caught it. She looked genuinely ashamed. Good luck. She left him there, at this borrowed desk, in this world he didn't belong to, with 72 hours to do the impossible. Alex sat down in the chair. It was ergonomic, perfectly adjusted, the kind of chair that probably cost more than his entire thrift store wardrobe. Through the window, he could see the city sprawling below. Manhattan at its finest, all glass towers and endless ambition. His phone buzzed. A text from Ms. Patterson, his neighbor and babysitter. "Lily's fine. Colored you a picture. Take your time at the interview." Alex closed his eyes. Lily was safe. Lily was happy. Lily didn't know that her daddy had just bet everything they had, everything they were, on a 3-day deadline that might destroy them both. His phone buzzed again. This time, a text from an unknown number. Mr. Rowan, Miranda Cole. "I'm giving you this opportunity not because I'm kind, but because I'm desperate. Prove you belong here, or prove everyone right about you. The choice is yours. Clock starts now." Alex opened his eyes, stared at the dark monitors in front of him, waiting for credentials that would give him access to a system he'd never touched, data he'd never seen, problems he'd never encountered. 72 hours. Time to get to work. The credentials came through 47 minutes later. Alex watched the system access email appear in his inbox, a temporary corporate account created just for him, valid for exactly 72 hours before it would self-destruct like something out of a spy movie. His username was Arawan Temp. Even the system knew he didn't belong. He logged in with hands that wanted to shake but couldn't afford to. The dual monitors blazed to life, displaying the Cole and Stratton internal portal. Alex had spent years imagining what the inside of a real analytics company looked like, what tools they used, what their systems contained. Now he was staring at it, and the sheer scale made his stomach drop. Project Atlas wasn't just one database or one model. It was an ecosystem. Dozens of interconnected data sources, processing pipelines, validation layers, output systems. The architecture diagram alone looked like a map of downtown Tokyo. Dense, complex, and completely overwhelming. "Jesus," Alex whispered. He spent the first hour just exploring, clicking through documentation that was scattered across multiple wikis and shared drives, trying to understand how everything connected. The original Atlas team had left notes, but they were sparse and often cryptic. Lines of code with comments like, "Don't touch this, it works," and legacy logic, "See Marcus for details." Except Marcus apparently didn't work there anymore. By hour 2, Alex had sketched out a rough flowchart on the notepad Dr. Patterson had left him, tracing data from source to output. The duplication error he'd spotted was worse than he'd initially thought. It wasn't just the device join. There were multiple places where the system was creating artificial inflation. Every time they'd tried to enhance the model, they'd layered on new logic without checking if it conflicted with existing calculations. It was a house of cards built by very smart people who'd been too busy being smart to be careful. Alex pulled up the retention calculation module and started reading through the SQL queries. They were sophisticated, elegant even, full of complex window functions and subqueries that would have made his community college instructors weep with joy. But elegant didn't mean correct. He was 3 hours in, furiously taking notes and building a mental model of all the places that needed fixing when a shadow fell across his desk. "So, you're the miracle worker." Alex looked up to find a man in his early 30s leaning against the cubicle divider, arms crossed, expression somewhere between curious and hostile. He wore a fitted Henley and designer jeans, the uniform of tech workers who'd decided business casual was for their parents' generation. His name badge read, Kyle Morrison, Senior Data Engineer. "Just trying to help," Alex said carefully. "Right. Help." Kyle's smile didn't reach his eyes. "You know what I love about this situation? I've been here 5 years. Worked my way up from junior analyst, got my master's from Berkeley, published papers on predictive modeling, and when we need someone to save the company, Miranda brings in you." He gestured at Alex like he was a curiosity in a museum. "No offense, man, but what are you even doing? You've been staring at that screen like it's written in hieroglyphics." "Understanding the system," Alex said evenly, "can't fix what you don't understand." "Understanding it?" Kyle laughed, sharp and humorless. "You've got 72 hours and you're spending them reading documentation? That's adorable. This is why credentials matter, man. Someone with actual training would know where to start." Alex felt the familiar burn of shame trying to claw its way up his throat, but he swallowed it down. He'd had this conversation 1,000 times, in 1,000 different forms. People who thought their degrees made them superior, who saw his lack of formal education as proof of inferiority rather than circumstance. "If you've got advice, I'm listening," Alex said. "Otherwise, I've got work to do." Kyle straightened, his expression hardening. "Here's my advice. Quit now. Walk away before you embarrass yourself. Because when you fail, and you will fail, Miranda's going to need someone to blame. And it sure as hell isn't going to be the rest of us who've been carrying this company on our backs while you were what? Stocking shelves?" "Warehouse logistics coordinator," Alex corrected quietly. "And I did more than stock. I optimized inventory flow, reduced overhead by 15%, implemented a predictive ordering system that saved—" "I don't care," Kyle interrupted. "Nobody cares about your little warehouse projects. This is the real world. These are real stakes. And you're in way over your head." He walked away before Alex could respond, leaving him alone at his temporary desk with his temporary credentials and his temporary chance. Alex took a slow breath, counted to 5, and went back to work. By hour 6, he had the full picture. The duplication error was the main culprit, but there were secondary issues. Inconsistent date handling that caused users to be counted as churned when they were actually just in different time zones. A rounding error in the engagement scoring that cascaded through downstream calculations. And a truly bizarre bug where users with apostrophes in their names were being silently excluded from certain queries. It was fixable. All of it was fixable. But fixing it would require rebuilding core components of the system, and he had to do it without breaking the dozens of reports and dashboards that depended on Atlas outputs. He started writing new queries, testing them against sample data in a development environment Dr. Patterson had set up for him. The code came naturally. Years of self-teaching had made him comfortable with SQL and Python in a way that felt almost instinctive. He didn't have the formal computer science vocabulary that someone like Kyle would use, but he understood the logic, the patterns, the way data moved and transformed. "Mr. Rowan?" Alex jerked his head up. He'd been so deep in concentration that he hadn't heard anyone approach. Dr. Patterson stood there with a concerned expression, holding a sandwich wrapped in deli paper. "It's past 8, she said gently. "You've been working for almost 7 hours straight. Have you eaten?" Alex blinked, suddenly aware that his stomach was eating itself. He'd had a granola bar for breakfast and nothing since. No, I should eat this." She set the sandwich on his desk. "Turkey and Swiss. And there's coffee in the break room that's actually decent, not the sludge from the big machine." "Thank you," Alex said, genuinely touched. "You didn't have to—" "I know." Dr. Patterson pulled over a spare chair and sat down, studying his monitors. "How's it going?" Alex hesitated. Admitting struggle felt dangerous, like showing weakness to a predator. But something about Dr. Patterson's expression, genuine concern mixed with scientific curiosity, made him answer honestly. "It's worse than I thought," he said. "The duplication is the big issue, but there are other problems layered throughout. I'm going to have to rebuild the core retention calculation from scratch, and then validate it against 18 months of historical data to make sure the new numbers are accurate." That's a massive undertaking, Dr. Patterson said slowly. "For one person, in 72 hours, that's borderline impossible." "I know. You're not even going to sleep, are you?" Alex thought of Lily, probably already asleep at Ms. Patterson's apartment, Mr. Carrots tucked under her arm. He thought of the look on Grant's face when he'd hissed his threat. He thought of Miranda's text, "Prove you belong here," or "Prove everyone right about you." "Can't afford to," he said simply. Dr. Patterson was quiet for a moment. Then she leaned forward. "Listen, I need to tell you something. What you did today, spotting that error, it was impressive, genuinely. But you need to understand the politics you've walked into." "The politics?" "Harris, Grant, Olivia, they're threatened by you. No, more than threatened. They're terrified. Because if you succeed, it proves that their entire gatekeeping apparatus is bullshit. Every time they've rejected someone for not having the right degree or the right pedigree, every time they've hired someone's nephew from Princeton over a more qualified candidate because of culture fit, all of that gets questioned if the guy with 2 years of community college saves the company." Alex absorbed this, watching the SQL query results populate on his screen. So they want me to fail. They need you to fail, Dr. Patterson corrected, and they're going to make it as hard as possible for you. Watch your back, Mr. Rowan. I mean that literally. She stood up, squeezed his shoulder once in a gesture of surprising warmth, and walked away. Alex ate the sandwich. It was excellent, probably from some artisan deli that charged $15 for lunch, and drank 3 cups of the good coffee, then settled back into work. By midnight, most of the office had cleared out. A few dedicated souls remained at their desks, but the vast floor felt cavernous and empty. Alex's eyes burned, but he pushed through, testing his new retention calculation against a subset of historical data. The numbers came back different, dramatically different. According to his revised model, Colin Stratton's retention prediction accuracy wasn't 91%. It was 68.3%, a 23-point gap, just like Dr. Patterson had estimated in that horrific moment earlier today. But more importantly, his model was consistent. When he ran it against different time periods, different client segments, different demographic slices, the calculations remained stable and logical. The old model had shown wild variance that the team had explained away as market volatility or seasonal effects. The new model showed what Alex suspected was the truth: steady, predictable patterns that could actually be used for forecasting. He was building something real, something that worked. It was 2 a.m. when his phone buzzed. A text from Ms. Patterson, the babysitter. Lily's asleep. She made you a card. Good luck, Daddy, with a picture of you as a superhero. She believes in you. Don't let her down. Alex stared at that text until his vision blurred. He saved his work, set multiple backups, and forced himself to leave the office. The subway ride home was empty, just him and a few other night shift workers too tired to do anything but stare at their reflections in the dark windows. Alex thought about Kyle's words, "You're in way over your head," and about Grant's threat. "We're going to make sure everyone knows it was you who killed this company." They were probably right to doubt him. He was nobody. A warehouse worker with delusions of adequacy. A single dad who'd spent years convincing himself that watching YouTube tutorials and reading library books was the same as real education. But then he thought of that moment in the interview room, when the system had crashed and he'd seen what they couldn't. That hadn't been luck. That had been pattern recognition, analytical thinking, the ability to see through noise to signal. Those skills didn't come from diplomas. They came from desperation and determination and thousands of hours of practice when everyone else was sleeping. He got home at 3 a.m., slipped quietly into Ms. Patterson's apartment to get Lily. His daughter was indeed asleep, clutching Mr. Carrots, a piece of construction paper carefully placed on the table nearby. The drawing showed a stick figure with a cape and a big smile, labeled Daddy the Hero, in Lily's uneven handwriting. Alex carried her home, tucked her into bed, and allowed himself 3 hours of sleep. Day 2 started at 6 a.m. when his alarm screamed him awake. Alex showered, dressed in his second-best shirt, the good one was already dirty, and took Lily to preschool. "Did you get the good job, Daddy?" she asked as he signed her in. "Still working on it, sweetheart," he said, crouching down to her level. "But I'm trying really hard." "You're the smartest daddy ever," Lily said, with the absolute conviction only a 5-year-old could muster. "You're gonna do it." Alex hugged her tight, then forced himself to let go and head back to Colin Stratton. The office was already buzzing when he arrived at 7:30. People who'd looked at him with curiosity yesterday now looked at him with something else. Speculation, maybe, or the kind of morbid interest people had watching someone walk a tightrope without a net. He sat down at his temporary desk and found something waiting for him, a sticky note on his monitor. "Nice try. But you're using test data. Real production data has access restrictions. Good luck with that." "Okay." Alex's stomach dropped. He pulled up the database connection settings and his fears confirmed. His credentials had been modified overnight. He no longer had access to the production database, only the development environment with its sanitized, limited test data. He couldn't rebuild the model with test data. He needed the real information, the actual customer records and activity logs from the past 18 months. Without it, everything he'd built last night was useless. Kyle. It had to be Kyle, or someone working with him. Dr. Patterson had warned him, but Alex hadn't expected sabotage this blatant, this fast. He pulled out his phone, started to call Dr. Patterson, then stopped. If he went crying to her every time someone made things difficult, he'd prove Grant right, that he was too weak for this world. There had to be a way. Alex pulled up the system architecture documentation again, studying the access control structures. Production data was locked behind security groups that required VP-level approval to modify. But there had to be other paths, other ways data flowed through the system. Then he saw it. The data warehouse sync process. Every night at 2 a.m., production data was copied to a reporting warehouse for analytics and BI tools. That warehouse had different access controls, looser, because it was designed for broader use by analysts and business users. Alex checked the permissions on the reporting warehouse. His temporary credentials didn't have direct access, but there was a set of pre-built views, curated data sets that extracted common slices of information. And one of those views, labeled Atlas Historical Metrics, appeared to contain exactly what he needed. It wasn't perfect. The view was read-only and slightly outdated, refreshed weekly rather than daily, but it was enough to validate his model against real data. Alex spent the next 4 hours adapting his queries to work with the view structure, pulling historical retention data and running his revised calculations against it. The numbers remained consistent. His model worked. By noon, he had preliminary results showing the corrected retention rates for the past 6 months. The truth was brutal. Cole and Stratton had been overpromising and under-delivering by an average of 22%. Clients had been making decisions based on flawed predictions, investing resources and strategies that the data never actually supported. It was the kind of mistake that spawned lawsuits and ended careers. Alex was documenting his findings, preparing a report that Miranda could actually use, when his computer screen suddenly went black. Not just dark, completely powered off, like someone had yanked the plug. Both monitors dead. The tower under his desk silent. Alex's heart rate spiked. He pressed the power button. Nothing. Held it down. Nothing. Problem, temp worker? He turned to find Grant standing behind him, that same smirk from yesterday plastered across his face. Several other senior staff members had gathered nearby, watching with barely concealed satisfaction. My workstation crashed, Alex said, keeping his voice level despite the panic screaming through his veins. Crashed? Grant made a show of looking concerned. That's unfortunate. It's pretty backed up today. Might take a few hours to get someone over here, maybe tomorrow. He leaned in closer, lowering his voice. Tick-tock, Mr. Rowan. How much time do you have left? 55 hours? Alex stood up slowly, facing Grant directly. The older man had 6 inches and 50 pounds on him, plus the confidence of someone who'd never really struggled for anything in his life. But Alex had spent 5 years fighting for every scrap, every opportunity, every moment of dignity. I'll figure it out, Alex said quietly. Sure you will. Grant's smile widened. Just like you'll figure out how to rebuild an enterprise system without computer access. Good luck with that. He walked away, the group of senior staff following him like an entourage, their laughter trailing behind them. Alex stood there, staring at his dead workstation, feeling the weight of impossibility crushing down on his chest. 55 hours left. No computer. Months of work to recreate. A 5-year-old daughter depending on him to not screw this up. This was it. This was how they'd win. Not by proving he lacked skills, but by making it physically impossible for him to complete the task. Alex sat back down, pulled out his phone, and stared at it. He could call Dr. Patterson again, but what could she do? The damage was done. He could complain to Miranda, but that would make him look weak, unable to handle adversity. Or Alex opened his phone's browser and logged into the Cole and Stratton portal through the mobile interface. The system was clunky on a small screen, but it worked. He could access the reporting warehouse views, pull data, even write basic queries. It would be slower, much slower, like trying to build a house with hand tools instead of power equipment. But it was possible. He spent the next hour figuring out the mobile workflow, copying query results into a cloud document he could access from his phone, building his analysis piece by piece in Google Sheets since he couldn't use Excel. At 2 p.m., someone cleared their throat behind him. Alex turned to find Dr. Patterson holding a laptop. "This is mine," she said without preamble. "Personal device, not company property. You can't access the production systems with it because of security protocols, but you can use it for documentation and analysis. And before you ask, no, I didn't get permission, so if anyone asks, you found it in a closet somewhere." Alex felt something tight in his chest loosen slightly. "Thank you," he managed. "Don't thank me yet. You still have to pull off a miracle." But she smiled, just a little, before walking away. Alex set up the laptop, connecting it to his phone's hotspot, since his network access had mysteriously failed along with his workstation. It wasn't elegant, but it worked. He could query the warehouse through his phone, analyze the results on the laptop, and slowly, painfully slowly, rebuild his model. The afternoon blurred into evening. Alex worked through lunch, through dinner, sustained by coffee and granola bars from the vending machine. Other employees drifted past, some curious, some openly hostile, a few offering quiet words of encouragement when no one else was listening. Around 7 p.m., Olivia stopped by his desk. Unlike Grant's obvious hostility or Kyle's sneering contempt, she projected a kind of clinical detachment, like he was a lab specimen she was observing. "You're still here," she noted. 48 hours left," Alex replied without looking up from the laptop screen. "This is fascinating, actually," Olivia said, leaning against his desk. "The psychology of it. You genuinely believe you can do this, don't you? Even with everything working against you." "I don't have the luxury of doubt," Alex said simply. "That's not an answer." Alex finally looked at her. "Yes, I believe I can do this because the alternative is going back to a life where I'm one emergency room visit away from bankruptcy, where my daughter asks for things I can't afford, where I'm 40 years old and still wondering if I'll ever be more than a warehouse worker. So yeah, I believe, because I have to." Olivia studied him for a long moment, her expression unreadable. Then she straightened up. "For what it's worth, I hope you prove me wrong. I don't think you will, but I hope you do." She walked away before Alex could decide if that was encouragement or pity. By midnight, Alex had reconstructed about 60% of his model. The laptop's smaller screen made everything harder, and the phone-based data access was agonizingly slow, but he was making progress. The core logic was sound. The calculations were checking out. He just needed more time. Time he didn't have. He made it home at 1 a.m., got 4 hours of sleep, and was back at his desk by 6 a.m. on day 3. Final day. Deadline at 8 a.m. tomorrow morning. 26 hours left. The office on day 3 had a different energy. Word had spread about what was happening. The temp worker trying to save the company, the system working against him, the impossible deadline ticking down. Some people seemed to be rooting for him now. Others wanted him to fail so life could return to normal. Alex ignored all of it. He had a model to finish. But by noon, he hit a wall. The historical data he needed to validate the final quarter of analysis required access to archived logs that weren't in the reporting warehouse. They'd been moved to cold storage months ago, apparently to save on database costs. Accessing them required special permissions that, surprise, surprise, his temporary credentials didn't include. Alex stared at his phone screen, at the error message telling him access denied, and felt something crack inside him. Not his resolve, that was too worn down to break, but something else. Hope, maybe. The last fragment of belief that the universe might actually bend in his favor for once. He'd been working for 40 hours straight with maybe 8 hours of sleep total. He'd overcome sabotaged credentials and a dead workstation and 1,000 small obstacles designed to make him fail. But this was different. This wasn't something he could work around. The data he needed was locked behind permissions only VPs could grant, and the VPs wanted him to fail. It was 12:37 p.m., 20 hours until the deadline. Game over. Alex put his head in his hands, too tired to even feel the full weight of defeat. He thought of Lily, of the card she'd made him, of her absolute conviction that her daddy was a hero who could do anything. He'd let her down. Again. "Mr. Rowan?" The voice cut through his despair like a knife. Alex looked up to find Miranda Cole standing at his desk, dressed in another severe pantsuit, her expression unreadable. "Walk with me," she said. It wasn't a request. Alex stood up, his legs protesting after hours of sitting, and followed Miranda across the floor toward her office. Every employee they passed immediately found something fascinating on their computer screens. No one made eye contact. Miranda's office was on the corner with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. It was decorated sparingly, a massive desk, 2 chairs, a small conference table, and a wall of awards and certifications that probably represented 30 years of building this company from nothing. She closed the door behind them, gestured for Alex to sit, and settled into the chair behind her desk. "Status report," she said. "Don't bullshit me." "How close are you?" Alex had nothing left to lose, so he told her the truth. "The model is 90% complete. The logic works. The calculations are accurate. But I need archived historical data to validate the last quarter of projections, and my credentials won't let me access cold storage. Without that validation, I can't prove the model is reliable. And without proof, Samuel Drake won't trust anything I present." Miranda absorbed this without expression. Then she asked, "Has your workstation been restored?" "No, ma'am." "Your database access?" "Restricted to the reporting warehouse only. And you've been working on a borrowed laptop connected to your phone for the past 2 days." It wasn't a question, but Alex answered anyway. "Yes, ma'am." Miranda was silent for a long moment, her fingers steepled in front of her face. Then she leaned back in her chair. "I'm going to tell you something, Mr. Rowan, and I'm only going to say it once, so listen carefully." Alex waited. 30 years ago, I was you. Not literally, but close enough. I was a junior analyst at a firm that doesn't exist anymore because the men running it were too stupid to recognize good ideas when they heard them. I had a degree, barely, from a state school, but I was a woman in a field run by men who thought my only value was making coffee and looking decorative at client meetings. I pitched a retention modeling system not unlike Atlas. They laughed me out of the room, said it was too complex, too ambitious, that I should stick to data entry. She paused, a muscle tightening in her jaw at the memory. So I quit. Started this company with $12,000 in savings and a laptop I'd stolen from my old office. Spent 2 years building that model on nights and weekends while working 3 different jobs to keep the lights on. Almost lost everything 6 times. But I didn't stop. Because people like us, people who've been underestimated, dismissed, told we're not good enough, we have something the privileged ones don't. We have no safety net. Which means we fly or we die. Miranda stood up, walked to her window, and looked out over the city she'd conquered. I gave you this chance because I saw myself in you, that desperation, that hunger. But I need to know if you're really like me, or if you're just another dreamer who'll fold when things get hard. They killed my computer, Alex said quietly. They blocked my data access. They've sabotaged me at every turn. How much harder does it need to get? Miranda turned back to face him, and for the first time he saw something that might have been respect in her eyes. "Harder than this," she said. "Because Samuel Drake arrives tomorrow morning at 8 a.m. He's bringing his legal team and his CFO. He's going to demand answers, refunds, and probably threaten us with lawsuits that could bankrupt this company. If I don't have a working model and accurate historical data to present, we're finished, all of us. Not just you." She walked back to her desk, pulled out a laptop, top of the line, the kind that probably cost $5,000, and handed it to Alex. "This is my personal machine, full admin credentials, access to everything, including cold storage archives." She pulled a coffee thermos from her desk drawer and held it out. "And this is my last bit of decent coffee from this morning. You're going to need it." Alex took both items, his hands trembling slightly. "The conference room at the end of the hall is yours for the next 20 hours, Miranda continued. "I'll make sure no one bothers you. Security will be at the door. And Mr. Rowan?" She met his eyes. "Don't make me regret this." "No, ma'am," Alex managed. "Thank you." "Don't thank me yet. You still have to pull off the impossible. Now get out of my office and go save my company." Alex practically ran to the conference room, Miranda's laptop clutched against his chest like a treasure. The security guard outside the room, a woman named Rita, who'd given him a sympathetic nod earlier, stepped aside to let him in. "Good luck," she said simply. The conference room was quiet, isolated, perfect. Alex set up at the long table, connected Miranda's laptop to the company network, and felt a surge of something like euphoria when he saw his access levels. Full administrative rights. He could access everything. Every database, every archive, every historical log. It was like being handed the keys to the kingdom after spending days rattling locked doors. 20 hours left. Time to finish this. Alex dove into the cold storage archives, pulling historical data from the past 18 months and running it through his revised model. The numbers poured across the screen: retention rates, churn predictions, engagement scores, all of it recalculated using correct logic instead of inflated duplicates. The picture that emerged was sobering but consistent. Cole & Stratton had been overpromising by an average of 23.7%. Their actual retention prediction accuracy was 68.3%. Still respectable in the industry, but nowhere near the market-leading 91% they'd been claiming. But more importantly, the new model was stable, reliable, honest. When Alex ran sensitivity tests, changing variables and time ranges, the results remained consistent. This was something that could actually be used for real forecasting, real decision-making. He documented everything meticulously: methodology, data sources, calculation logic, validation results. He built visualizations showing the difference between old and new models, highlighting exactly where the duplications had occurred and how they'd been fixed. By 8 p.m., he had a complete technical report. By 10 p.m., he had an executive summary that even non-technical board members could understand. By midnight, he had contingency analyses showing how the corrected model would affect various client scenarios. At 2 a.m., with 6 hours until the deadline, Alex leaned back in his chair and stared at the completed work on Miranda's laptop. It was done. All of it. The impossible task completed. He should have felt triumphant. Instead, he felt terrified. Because now came the hard part: convincing Samuel Drake not to destroy them. Alex allowed himself 30 minutes to close his eyes, resting his head on the conference table. His phone alarm jolted him awake at 2:30 a.m. He splashed water on his face in the bathroom, finger-combed his hair, and went back to the conference room to triple-check everything one last time. At 5 a.m., the first employees started arriving, the early risers and the workaholics. At 6 a.m., the main floor filled up. By 7 a.m., the entire office was buzzing with nervous energy. Everyone knew what today meant. Alex transferred his final report and model to multiple backup locations, then printed out physical copies using the conference room printer. His hands left sweat marks on the paper. At 7:45, Miranda appeared at the conference room door. "Is it ready?" she asked. "Yes, ma'am." "Can you present it?" Alex thought about his warehouse uniform, about standing in front of skeptical clients explaining inventory optimization. He thought about Lily's preschool presentations, where she'd insisted he come watch her talk about her favorite color. He thought about every moment in his life when he'd had to convince someone he was worth listening to, despite all evidence suggesting otherwise. "Yes, ma'am," he repeated. "Then let's go meet our fate," Miranda said. And together they walked toward the main conference room where Samuel Drake was waiting to end them all. The executive conference room felt like a courtroom. Samuel Drake sat at the head of the massive table, flanked by 2 lawyers in matching charcoal suits and a CFO, whose expressions suggested he'd already calculated exactly how much pain he could inflict through litigation. Drake himself was in his 60s, silver hair, immaculately styled, wearing a suit that probably cost more than Alex had earned in the past year. Everything about him radiated power and the absolute certainty that he held all the cards. Behind Drake's delegation, the floor-to-ceiling windows showed Manhattan waking up, sunlight just beginning to paint the glass towers gold. It would have been beautiful if Alex's entire future wasn't about to be decided in the next hour. On Cole & Stratton's side of the table sat Miranda at the center, flanked by Harris and 2 board members Alex had never seen before. Grant and Olivia were positioned against the wall like soldiers awaiting orders, their faces carefully neutral. Dr. Patterson stood near the presentation screen, ready to handle the technical setup. And at the far end, almost forgotten, was Alex. The man nobody had wanted in the building 4 days ago. The man who now held their survival in his sleep-deprived hands. "Let's not waste time with pleasantries," Drake said, his voice carrying the kind of authority that came from 40 years of crushing competitors. "I flew here from Chicago at 5 this morning because your system has been feeding my company garbage data for 18 months. My investment decisions, my strategic planning, my board presentations, all of it based on your firm's supposedly industry-leading retention analytics. Analytics that were, as it turns out, catastrophically wrong. He slid a document across the table toward Miranda. Alex couldn't see what it was, but he watched Miranda's jaw tighten as she read it. "That's a draft complaint," Drake continued. "$28 million in damages, another $15 million in consequential losses. My lawyers are very thorough. We've documented every decision my company made based on your flawed projections, every dollar we invested or didn't invest because we trusted your numbers." He leaned forward, eyes hard. "I'm giving you exactly one chance to explain why I shouldn't file this today and spend the next 5 years destroying your reputation in court." The silence that followed felt heavy enough to crush bone. Alex could hear his own heartbeat, could see a muscle twitching in Harris's temple, could feel the weight of 100 employees outside this room waiting to learn if they still had jobs. Miranda didn't flinch. She set the legal document aside and met Drake's eyes with the same steel that had built this company from nothing. "Mr. Drake, you're absolutely right," she said, and the admission seemed to startle him. "Our system was flawed, badly flawed. We failed you, and we failed every client who trusted us. I'm not going to insult your intelligence by making excuses or minimizing what happened." "Then what exactly am I doing here?" Drake asked coldly. "If you're just going to confess, I can file the lawsuit from my hotel. You're here because 4 days ago, someone walked into my building and spotted the flaw that my entire team had missed for 18 months. And in the 72 hours since, he's rebuilt our core system from the ground up. I'm not asking you to forgive us, Mr. Drake. I'm asking you to look at what we've built to fix this mess and decide if it's worth giving us one more chance." Drake's expression didn't change, but one of his lawyers leaned over and whispered something in his ear. He waved the man away irritably. "You rebuilt your entire analytics platform in 3 days, Drake said, making it sound like a fairy tale. "That's what you're claiming." "Not me," Miranda said. "Him." She gestured to Alex, and suddenly every eye in the room locked onto him. Drake's gaze swept over Alex's rumpled shirt, his exhausted face, his complete lack of executive presence. The CFO actually smirked. "This is the miracle worker?" Drake asked. "No offense, son, but you look like you just rolled out of a dumpster." 72 hours without sleep will do that, sir," Alex said, his voice steadier than he felt. "But the work speaks for itself." "Does it?" Drake leaned back in his chair, steepling his fingers. "And what exactly qualifies you to rebuild an enterprise analytics system? Where's your PhD, your credentials, your track record?" Here it was. The moment Alex had been dreading. He could lie, embellish, try to make his background sound more impressive than it was. Or he could tell the truth and hope that the work really did speak for itself. "I don't have a PhD," Alex said quietly. "I have 2 years of community college, 5 years of self-teaching, and 72 hours of the most intense work of my life. What qualifies me is that I saw the flaw when no one else did, and I fixed it." The room was so quiet, Alex could hear the ventilation system humming. Then Drake did something unexpected. He laughed. Not a pleasant laugh, but not entirely cruel either. The sound of a man who'd heard every pitch, every promise, every desperate gambit in 4 decades of business. "You've got balls, I'll give you that," Drake said. "All right, kid. Show me what you've got. You've got 30 minutes to convince me not to bury this company, starting now." Alex stood up, his legs unsteady for a moment before muscle memory from 1,000 warehouse briefings kicked in. He walked to the front of the room where Dr. Patterson handed him the remote for the presentation screen. She gave his arm a quick squeeze, silent encouragement, and stepped back. The first slide appeared. Plain white background, black text, no fancy graphics or corporate branding, just words. Project Atlas revision, technical analysis and corrected methodology. The original Atlas system had a fundamental flaw in how it counted users, Alex began, surprised by how calm his voice sounded. Every time someone logged in from a different device, phone, tablet, laptop, the system created a separate record. When calculating retention rates, it counted the same person multiple times. A loyal customer who used 3 devices looked like 3 different retained users in the analytics. He advanced to the next slide showing the database schema with the problematic joins highlighted in red. This duplication inflated retention numbers by an average of 23.7% across all client accounts. Your company's actual retention rate over the past 18 months wasn't the 91% that was reported. It was 68.3%. Drake's CFO was already typing on a tablet, presumably running calculations. One of the lawyers scribbled notes. Drake himself remained motionless, watching Alex like a predator evaluating prey. 68% is still above industry average, Alex continued, but more importantly, it's accurate. You can make real decisions with accurate data. The inflated numbers were worse than useless. They were actively misleading. He clicked to the next slide showing a comparison chart. Old model predictions versus actual outcomes, the gap between them starkly visible in red. Here's what the old system told you would happen versus what actually happened. Notice the variance? The old model showed 91% accuracy, but look at these outliers. Clients the system said would stay left anyway. Clients it said would churn stayed. The error bars were massive. You couldn't trust it for strategic planning because the predictions were fundamentally unreliable. We noticed the variance, Drake said, speaking for the first time since Alex had started. Your team called it market volatility, said it was normal. It wasn't normal, Alex said. It was the system failing while pretending to succeed. The duplication error created artificial consistency in the training data, which made the model look more accurate than it was. But when applied to real-world predictions, the logic fell apart. He advanced through several more slides, each one showing a different aspect of the flawed methodology. The room remained silent except for his voice and the occasional sound of Drake's team taking notes. Even Grant and Olivia, who'd spent 3 days trying to sabotage him, were leaning forward, paying attention. I rebuilt the retention calculation from scratch, Alex continued, pulling up the new model architecture. Implemented proper user deduplication, fixed the device tracking logic, corrected 3 secondary bugs that were cascading through the system. Then I validated everything against 18 months of historical data. The next slide showed the corrected retention rates mapped over time. The numbers were lower, but the variance had disappeared. The predictions formed clean, consistent patterns. Your actual retention rate, 68.3%, is stable and predictable. You can forecast with it. You can build strategy around it. More importantly, you can trust it. Drake was studying the charts now, his expression unreadable. The CFO had stopped typing and was staring at the screen with what might have been grudging respect. Alex clicked to a new section, Client Impact Analysis. I know you're concerned about the decisions you made based on the flawed data, he said, addressing Drake directly now. So I ran a retroactive analysis. I took every major strategic recommendation Atlas made to your company in the past 18 months and recalculated them using the corrected model. The slide showed a table of recommendations, investment decisions, market expansions, customer acquisition strategies, with 2 columns, Atlas original recommendation and corrected analysis. In 14 of 18 cases, the corrected model reaches the same conclusion as the original. Your strategic decisions were sound even if the underlying numbers were wrong. In 3 cases, the corrected model suggests you were more conservative than necessary. You actually left opportunity on the table. And in 1 case, Alex paused, knowing this was the moment that would either save them or end them. In 1 case, the acquisition of the Northern Regional Division, the corrected model suggests you overpaid by approximately 12% based on inflated retention projections. The room went dead silent. 12% of a $400 million acquisition, Drake said slowly, is $48 million. Yes, sir. So your new model is telling me I overpaid for an acquisition because your old model gave me garbage data. Yes, sir, but what? Drake's voice had gone very quiet, which somehow felt more dangerous than shouting. But the acquisition itself was still strategically sound, Alex said, refusing to back down now. The Northern Division gives you market presence you didn't have, eliminates a competitor, and provides long-term value that exceeds the purchase price even with the overpayment. You just paid a premium you didn't need to. And sir, if I can speak frankly, you've come this far, Drake said coldly. Might as well finish. Every major acquisition involves some amount of overpayment. Due diligence is never perfect. 12% is well within normal variance for a deal that size. The fact that you can now quantify exactly how much you overpaid, That's actually valuable information for future negotiations. Drake stared at him for what felt like an hour, but was probably 10 seconds. Then he turned to his CFO. Is he right about the 12% being normal variance? The CFO hesitated, then nodded reluctantly. For an acquisition that complex, yes, we typically budget 15 to 20% variance in our models. Drake turned back to Alex. Keep going. You've got 15 minutes left. Alex's hands were shaking slightly as he advanced the slides, but he pushed through. He showed the validation testing he'd run, the sensitivity analyses, the edge cases he'd checked. He demonstrated that the new model didn't just fix the duplication error, it was fundamentally more robust, more reliable, more useful than what had come before. The old system was built by people trying to impress clients with high accuracy numbers, Alex said, reaching his final slides. The new system is built to tell the truth, even when the truth is less impressive. Because you can't make good decisions with pretty lies. You can only make good decisions with ugly facts. He clicked to the last slide. Implementation timeline. If you choose to continue with Cole and Stratton, the new model can be fully deployed within 2 weeks. All historical data has been reprocessed. All client reports have been recalculated. You'll have complete transparency into what the old system told you versus what actually happened. And going forward, you'll have predictions you can actually trust. Alex set down the remote and faced Drake directly. I know we failed you, sir. I know you have every right to walk away and sue us into oblivion, but this new system works. It's honest, and it's yours if you want it. The silence that followed felt like standing on the edge of a cliff. Alex could see Miranda's reflection in the window glass, her face composed but her hands gripping the armrests of her chair. He could see Harris looking like he might be sick. He could see Grant and Olivia frozen against the wall, waiting for the verdict. Drake stood up slowly, walked to the presentation screen and studied the charts up close. His CFO joined him, and they had a whispered conversation that Alex couldn't hear. One of the lawyers was typing furiously on a laptop. The other was reviewing printed copies of Alex's technical documentation. Finally, Drake turned back to face the room. Miranda, he said, his tone unreadable. Step outside with me. Bring the kid. It wasn't a request. Miranda stood up, gestured for Alex to follow, and the three of them walked out of the conference room into a smaller adjacent office. Drake closed the door, and suddenly the buffer of lawyers and executives and corporate formality was gone. It was just the three of them. I'm going to tell you what I think happened here, Drake said, pacing in the small space. I think your company got arrogant, got comfortable, started believing your own hype. And when you're charging premium prices based on premium accuracy, nobody wants to look too closely at whether the accuracy is real, because if it's not real, the whole house of cards collapses. Miranda started to respond, but Drake held up a hand. I'm not finished. This kid, no offense, son, this kid spots a flaw in 30 seconds that your entire team missed for 18 months. That tells me one of two things. Either your team is incompetent, or they saw the problem and ignored it because fixing it would hurt the business. I don't know which is worse. My team isn't incompetent, Miranda said, her voice tight. But you're right that we got comfortable. We built something impressive and stopped questioning whether it was right. That's on me. That's my failure as a leader. Drake studied her for a moment, then turned to Alex. You really build this whole thing in 72 hours? Yes, sir. Why? You don't even work here. You could have walked away after spotting the flaw, let this whole company burn. Why break your back to save people who rejected you? Alex thought about all the answers he could give, about needing the job, about wanting to prove himself, about refusing to let Grant and Harris and everyone else who'd dismissed him be right. But what came out was simpler and more true. Because fixing broken things is what I do, Alex said quietly. And because 100 people in this building don't deserve to lose their jobs because the system was flawed. They didn't build it wrong on purpose. They just didn't see what I saw. That doesn't make them bad at their jobs. It makes them human. Drake was quiet for a long moment, looking between Alex and Miranda. The lawsuit I drafted, he said finally, is based on provable damages from 18 months of bad data. My lawyers are very good. They'll win and they'll take everything you have. This company will be gone in a year. Miranda's face went carefully blank, but Alex saw her hands curl into fists. However, Drake continued, and Alex's heart stuttered at that word. Your new system actually does look solid, better than solid. The transparency, the documentation, the honest assessment of where we got bad recommendations, that's worth something. And more importantly, this kid has something my company could use. He turned to Alex. I'm prepared to reinstate the contract. Full value, $18 million annually, but I want him leading the team. The words didn't make sense at first. Alex's exhausted brain tried to process them and came up empty. Leading the team? Miranda repeated, her tone carefully neutral. You heard me. I'm not paying $18 million a year to work with people who miss obvious errors for months. I'm paying to work with people who spot them in 30 seconds and fix them in 3 days. He leads the Atlas project, or I walk. Mr. Drake, Miranda said slowly, Alex doesn't even work for us yet. We had an agreement that if he completed this project, I'd offer him a position, but then offer him the position right now, Drake interrupted. Make him lead data engineer or senior analyst or whatever title you need to give him authority over the Atlas team, because that's my condition. He's in charge, or the deal's off. Alex felt like he'd been hit by a truck. Lead data engineer. In charge of the Atlas team. The same people who'd spent 3 days sabotaging him, who'd mocked his credentials, who'd been certain he would fail. Can we have a moment? Miranda asked. You've got 5 minutes, Drake said, then walked out of the small office, leaving Alex and Miranda alone. Miranda turned to face Alex, and for the first time since he'd met her, she looked uncertain. This isn't how I planned to do this, she said. But he's right. You earned it. More than earned it. The question is whether you want it. Because leading a team that resents you, that tried to destroy you, that will question every decision you make, that's not going to be easy. Alex thought about the past 3 days. The sabotage, the contempt, the 1,000 small cruelties designed to make him quit. He thought about Kyle's sneer, about Grant's threats, about Olivia's clinical dismissal of everything he was. Then he thought about Lily, about the way her face lit up when he came home, about how she believed he could do anything because she didn't know yet that the world wasn't built for people like them. I want it, Alex said. Not because I want to prove anything to them, but because I know I can make the system better, and because someone needs to make sure this never happens again. Miranda studied him for a long moment, then extended her hand. Then welcome to Cole and Stratton Analytics, Mr. Rowan, lead data engineer. Starting salary $120,000 annually with full benefits. Don't make me regret this. Alex shook her hand, his grip firm despite the trembling in his fingers. $120,000. It was more money than he'd ever imagined earning. More than enough to move Lily into a better apartment, to buy her new clothes that actually fit, to take her to the zoo and Disney World and every place she'd ever dreamed about. Thank you, he managed. I won't let you down. I know you won't, because if you do, Drake will destroy both of us. She smiled, just slightly. No pressure. They walked back into the main conference room together. Drake was standing by the windows, talking quietly with his CFO. The rest of the room looked frozen, everyone waiting to see if they still had careers. Mr. Drake, Miranda said clearly, we accept your terms. Alex Rowan will be lead data engineer in charge of Project Atlas, effective immediately. The contract is reinstated. Drake turned, studied them both, then nodded once. Good. I want weekly progress reports, full transparency. And the first sign that you're slipping back into old habits, I'm gone. Understood? Understood, Miranda said. Drake gestured to his team. We're done here. My lawyers will send over the amended contract by end of business today. He paused at the door, looked back at Alex. Kid, I hope you know what you just signed up for. Leading a team of people who think you stole their project is going to be hell. I've been through worse, Alex said quietly. Drake's expression shifted into something that might have been respect. I believe you have. Good luck. And then he was gone, his entourage trailing behind him, leaving the Cole and Stratton team standing in stunned silence. Harris was the first to speak, his voice tight. Miranda, you can't be serious. He's going to lead the Atlas team? He doesn't have the experience, the credentials. He has something better. Miranda interrupted. He has results. And he has Samuel Drake's trust, which is more than any of us can say right now. She turned to address the room. As of this moment, Alex Rowan is lead data engineer for Project Atlas. He reports directly to me. Anyone who has a problem with that can submit their resignation. The silence was deafening. Grant looked apoplectic. Olivia's expression was carefully blank. Dr. Patterson was trying to hide a smile. And Kyle, standing in the back corner, looked like he'd just watched his entire worldview collapse. Alex, Miranda continued, take the rest of the day off. Get some sleep. Monday morning will set you up properly. Real office, full onboarding, team introductions. But right now, you look like death, and you've earned a break. Yes, ma'am, Alex said, his voice distant. He was having trouble processing that this was real, that he'd actually done it. As the room started to clear, people filing out with mixed expressions of shock and resentment and disbelief, Dr. Patterson approached him. Congratulations, she said warmly. And thank you. You just saved about 100 jobs, including mine. I didn't do it alone, Alex said. You helped me. The laptop, the data access. I gave you tools. You built the solution. Don't diminish what you accomplished. She squeezed his shoulder. Now go home. You look like you're about to collapse. Alex gathered his things, his phone, his notes, the borrowed laptop he'd have to return to Miranda. His temporary credentials would expire at midnight, but he wouldn't need them anymore. He'd have permanent ones, real ones. He actually worked here now. He was halfway to the elevator when Grant stepped into his path. You think you won, Grant said quietly, his voice venomous. You think this changes anything, but you're still the same nobody who walked in here 4 days ago. A glorified warehouse worker pretending to be something he's not. And the second you screw up, and you will screw up, we'll be waiting. Alex met his eyes steadily, too exhausted for fear or anger. I'm not pretending to be anything, he said. I'm just doing the work. And if you spent half as much energy actually doing your job as you spend trying to tear other people down, maybe this company wouldn't have needed saving. He walked past Grant into the elevator, pressed the button for the ground floor, and let the doors close on whatever response Grant had prepared. The morning air hit him like a slap when he stepped outside. Manhattan was fully awake now, the streets packed with people rushing to their own jobs, their own lives, completely unaware that Alex Rowan had just survived the most intense 72 hours of his existence. He pulled out his phone and texted Ms. Patterson. Can you keep Lily until this afternoon? We'll pay extra. Something important came up. The response came 30 seconds later. Of course. She's having a blast. Take your time. Alex stood on the sidewalk for a moment, watching the city flow around him. 4 days ago, he'd been nobody. A rejected applicant, a struggling single dad, a man watching his dreams slip away one declined application at a time. Now he was lead data engineer at one of the most prestigious analytics firms in the country, making more money than he'd thought possible, in charge of the same project that had almost destroyed him. He should go home, sleep for 12 hours, let his body recover from the 72-hour marathon. But there was something he needed to do first. Alex pulled up his phone's map and started walking. 20 minutes later, he was standing outside Lily's preschool. It was mid-morning, which meant outdoor playtime. Through the chain-link fence, he could see the kids running around the small playground, their laughter carrying on the autumn breeze. Then he spotted her, Lily, with her gap-toothed smile and pigtails that were already coming loose, pushing herself on the swings with fierce determination. She was wearing the shoes that were too small and the jacket that was getting too short in the sleeves, but she was happy. She was safe. She was his whole world. As if sensing his presence, Lily looked up and saw him at the fence. Her face lit up like the sun. "Daddy!" she screamed, abandoning the swing and running toward him. One of the teachers called out something about being careful, but Lily ignored it, crashing into the fence with her small hands grabbing the chain link. "Did you get the good job?" she asked breathlessly. "Did they say yes?" Alex crouched down to her eye level, not trusting his voice for a moment. "Yeah, sweetheart," he finally managed. "They said yes. Daddy got the good job." Lily's shriek of joy probably woke up half the neighborhood. She bounced on her toes, clapping her hands, her excitement so pure and unfiltered that Alex felt his eyes burning. "I knew it!" she said.
I told everyone you would. My daddy's the smartest. Can we go to the zoo now? You promised when you got the good job we could go to the zoo. Soon, Alex said, his throat tight. Very soon. I promise. Okay, Lily said, already bouncing back toward the swings. Then she stopped, ran back, and pressed her face against the fence. Daddy, I love you. I love you too, sweetheart. More than anything. She ran off to tell her friends about her daddy getting the good job, and Alex stood there watching her for a few more minutes, letting the reality sink in.
He'd done it. Against every odd, every obstacle, every person who'd said he couldn't, he'd done it. The walk home felt surreal. Alex climbed the stairs to his one-bedroom apartment, soon to be a former one-bedroom apartment because they could afford better now, and collapsed onto his bed fully clothed. His phone buzzed one last time. A text from Miranda. My office. Monday, 8 a.m. sharp. Don't be late, Mr. Rowan. We have a lot of work to do. Alex smiled, set an alarm for 6 hours from now so he wouldn't sleep through picking up Lily, and let himself finally rest. When he woke up that afternoon, the world hadn't changed. He was still in the same apartment with the same broken heating and the same noisy neighbors. But everything felt different. The weight that had pressed on his chest for 5 years, the constant fear of not being enough, of failing his daughter, of being trapped forever in a life he couldn't escape, had lifted. He picked up Lily from Ms. Patterson's apartment and told her everything, not the technical details or the office politics, but the simple truth. Daddy had gotten a real job, a good job, the kind of job that meant she could have new shoes that fit and a winter coat that wasn't from the donation bin, and maybe, just maybe, that trip to Disney World she'd been asking about for 2 years. Lily listened with wide eyes, then threw her arms around his neck. See, she whispered into his ear, I told you that you were a hero. That night, Alex made dinner, boxed mac and cheese because some traditions didn't need to change, and they ate together on their small couch while watching Lily's favorite cartoon. She fell asleep against his shoulder halfway through. Mr. Carrots clutched in her arms, a smile on her sleeping face. Alex sat there in the gathering darkness, his daughter warm against him, and thought about the past 4 days. The rejection, the impossible deadline, the sabotage, the 72 hours of hell that had somehow led to salvation. He thought about Grant's words. You're still the same nobody who walked in here 4 days ago. And Grant was right, in a way. Alex was the same person, same background, same lack of credentials, same scars from a life that hadn't been kind. But he'd proven something that mattered more than credentials. That skill and determination and sheer stubborn refusal to quit could sometimes, just sometimes, be enough. Outside the window, the city lights were starting to glow. Somewhere out there was the Colin Stratton building, where his new office waited. Where a team that resented him would be forced to work with him. Where 100 new challenges were probably already forming, but Alex had faced impossible odds before and won. He'd do it again. For now, though, he sat in the darkness with his sleeping daughter, allowing himself to feel something he hadn't felt in years. Hope. Monday morning would come soon enough. The real work would begin, but tonight, in this moment, Alex Rowan was exactly where he needed to be, and for the first time in a very long time, he knew they were going to be okay. The weekend passed in a blur of surreal normalcy. Alex took Lily to the park on Saturday, pushing her on the swings while his mind kept drifting back to Monday morning, to the office that was waiting, to the team that didn't want him. On Sunday, they went grocery shopping, and for the first time in 5 years, Alex didn't have to choose between buying Lily the cereal she liked or the one that was on sale. He bought both, and the small act of abundance made his throat tight. Sunday night, after Lily was asleep, Alex stood in front of his closet staring at his limited wardrobe options. The thrift store blazer that had carried him through the interview looked even more worn in the overhead light. His 2 dress shirts were both showing age around the collars. He had exactly 1 pair of dress pants that didn't have a stain or tear somewhere. This was what a lead data engineer wore to his first official day. This was all he had. Alex set his alarm for 5 in the morning, laid out his best outfit, and tried to sleep. His mind wouldn't cooperate, running through scenarios and conversations, imagining all the ways this could go wrong. At some point, exhaustion won, and he drifted off, only to wake up 3 minutes before his alarm with his heart already racing. He was showered, dressed, and standing in Ms. Patterson's apartment by 6:30, Lily still mostly asleep in his arms. "Big day," Ms. Patterson said warmly, taking Lily from him. "You look terrified." "I am terrified," Alex admitted. "Good. That means you care." She adjusted Lily's grip on Mr. Carrots. "Now go show them what you're made of." The subway ride into Manhattan felt longer than usual, every stop an eternity. Alex watched his reflection in the dark window and barely recognized himself. Same face, same clothes, but something fundamental had shifted. 4 days ago, he'd been invisible. Now he was about to walk into that building as someone who mattered. Colin Stratton's lobby felt different on a Monday morning. The weekend quiet was gone, replaced by a steady stream of employees filtering in, grabbing coffee from the catered station, chatting about their weekends. Alex recognized a few faces from Thursday's chaos, but most were strangers. How many of them knew his story? How many had heard about the warehouse worker who'd saved the company? He made it to the elevators and pressed the button for the 12th floor. The doors opened to reveal Kyle already inside, holding a coffee cup with the Colin Stratton logo. Kyle's expression went from neutral to hostile in half a second. "Well, well," he said as Alex stepped in. "The conquering hero returns. Tell me, did you practice your acceptance speech over the weekend?" "Just trying to do my job," Alex said evenly, watching the floor numbers climb. "Your job, right." Kyle's laugh was bitter. "You've been here 4 days and you already think you know how everything works. You have any idea how many people you just leapfrogged? People who've been here for years, who actually earned their positions." "I earned mine too," Alex said quietly. "Just differently than you did. You got lucky. You spotted one error and Miranda made you into some kind of savior because she was desperate. But luck runs out, man, and when it does, when you make your first real mistake, we'll all be watching." The elevator dinged, the doors opening onto the 12th floor. Alex stepped out, then turned back. "I'm not going anywhere, Kyle. So you can spend your energy trying to tear me down, or you can spend it actually working with me. Your choice." He walked away before Kyle could respond, his heart hammering but his steps steady. The floor was already filling up with Monday morning energy. Alex made his way through the maze of cubicles, drawing glances and whispers until he found Miranda's office. The door was open, and she was already at her desk, working through what looked like a mountain of emails. "Mr. Rowan," she said without looking up. "You're early. Good. Have a seat." Alex sat in one of the chairs facing her desk, the same chairs where Drake had sat 3 days ago, while deciding whether to destroy them all. Miranda finished typing something, then turned her full attention to him. "How are you feeling?" she asked. It was such an unexpected question that Alex answered honestly. "Terrified." "Also good. Arrogance gets people killed in this business. Fear keeps you sharp." She pulled out a folder and slid it across the desk. "Your employment contract? Review it carefully. Salary, benefits, stock options, non-compete clauses. Sign it when you're ready." Alex opened the folder with hands that wanted to shake. The first page showed his official title, Lead Data Engineer, Project Atlas. The salary line made his breath catch. $120,000 annually, with performance bonuses that could add another $20,000. Health insurance, dental, vision, 4 weeks paid vacation, a 401k match. It was more than money. It was security. It was the ability to breathe without constant fear of the next emergency destroying them. "This is generous," Alex managed. "It's market rate for someone leading a critical project," Miranda corrected. "Don't undersell yourself, Mr. Rowan. You saved an $18 million contract. You're worth what I'm paying you." Alex signed the contract with a pen Miranda provided, his signature looking small and uncertain next to all the official legal language. "Now for the hard part," Miranda said, taking the signed contract back. "Your team. Currently, Project Atlas has 7 people assigned to it. 6 of them have advanced degrees, 3 to 5 years of experience each, and exactly 0 respect for the person who just became their boss. You need to win them over, or this is going to be a nightmare for everyone involved." "How do I do that?" Alex asked. Miranda smiled, thin and sharp. "Figure it out. You're a smart guy. But I'll give you one piece of advice. Don't try to be their friend. You're their leader now. Earn their respect by being better at the job than they are, not by being likable. She stood up, signaling the meeting was over. Your office is 3 doors down. It's small, but it's yours. Team meeting is at 9. Don't be late. Alex's office turned out to be barely larger than a closet, with a window that looked out over a ventilation shaft and a desk that had definitely seen better decades. But it had a door that closed and a nameplate already mounted outside. Alex Rowan, lead data engineer. He sat in the chair, ergonomic, expensive, nothing like the folding chairs at his old warehouse job, and stared at the nameplate through the glass wall. This was real. This was actually happening. At 8:45, Alex forced himself to stand up and walk to the main conference room where the team meeting was scheduled. He arrived to find 6 people already seated around the table, their conversation dying the moment he walked in. Kyle was there, sitting with his arms crossed and expression closed. Olivia sat at the far end, her designer glasses perched on her nose, looking at him with clinical interest. The other 4 were strangers. 2 women and 2 men, all looking expensive and educated and deeply skeptical. Morning, Alex said, taking the seat at the head of the table because that's where Miranda would expect him to sit, even if it felt presumptuous. I'm Alex Rowan. I know we're in an unusual situation here, so I thought we should talk about how this is going to work. You mean how you're going to work? One of the men said. He was in his late 20s with perfectly styled hair and a shirt that probably cost more than Alex's entire outfit. His nameplate read, Marcus Chen. Because the rest of us have been doing this job just fine until you showed up. Project Atlas wasn't fine, Alex said evenly. It had a critical flaw that went undetected for 18 months. That's why we're here. A flaw that you spotted in 30 seconds, Olivia said, her tone making it clear what she thought of that timeline, which suggests either incredible insight or incredible luck. I'm leaning toward the latter. Think what you want, Alex said. The model is fixed. Samuel Drake's contract is reinstated. We have a job to do, and I need everyone's help to do it well. You need our help, Marcus repeated slowly. But you're the one in charge. How exactly does that work when you have less experience than any of us? When you don't even have the educational background to understand half the technical concepts we work with? Alex felt the familiar burn of shame trying to surface, but he pushed it down. He'd been here before, in different rooms with different people making different versions of the same argument. He was tired of defending his lack of credentials. You're right, he said, and the admission seemed to surprise them. I don't have your degrees. I didn't go to MIT or Stanford. I learned this work on my own time while raising a kid and working night shifts. So yeah, there are probably technical concepts you know better than I do, which is why I'm going to rely on your expertise. He leaned forward, making eye contact with each of them. But I also saw something you missed, and I fixed it in 72 hours while someone on this team was actively sabotaging me. So here's how this is going to work. I'm going to lead this project. You're going to do your jobs. And if you have a problem with my decisions, you bring it to me directly instead of undermining me behind my back. We clear? The silence that followed felt heavy and charged. Kyle was staring at him with barely contained hostility. Marcus looked skeptical. Olivia's expression was unreadable. But one of the women, her nameplate said Jennifer Marsh, nodded slowly. Fair enough, Jennifer said. What's the priority? Alex pulled up the presentation he'd prepared over the weekend, displaying it on the conference room screen. Drake wants weekly progress reports showing that the new model is stable and accurate. That means we need to run continuous validation tests against live data, document any anomalies, and provide transparent reporting on prediction accuracy versus actual outcomes. I've outlined a testing framework that should catch any issues before they become critical. He walked them through the plan, explaining his methodology, fielding questions, pushing back when someone suggested a shortcut that would compromise accuracy. The meeting lasted 90 minutes, and by the end, the hostility in the room hadn't disappeared, but it had shifted into something more manageable. Professional skepticism instead of personal resentment. As people filed out, Jennifer hung back. Can I give you some advice? She asked quietly. Please. Watch Kyle. He's smart and he's ambitious, and he thought he was going to get your position before you showed up. He's not going to let this go. I gathered that, Alex said, but I can't spend all my time worrying about office politics. You should spend some time worrying about it, Jennifer countered, because Kyle has friends in senior management. He's been here long enough to build alliances. And if he decides to make your life hell, he has the connections to do it. She left before Alex could respond, leaving him alone in the conference room with that warning echoing in his head. The next few days fell into a rhythm that was equal parts exhilarating and exhausting. Alex arrived early every morning, staying late every evening, learning the systems and processes that his team took for granted. He sat in on meetings where people used terminology he had to look up later, where discussions referenced projects and initiatives he knew nothing about. Every day felt like being thrown into deep water and told to swim. But slowly, gradually, things started to click. The systems made sense. The data flows became familiar. The technical jargon resolved into patterns he could understand and work with. And more importantly, his team started to see that he actually knew what he was doing. On Wednesday, Alex caught a data validation error that would have thrown off their weekly report to Drake. Jennifer noticed first, then called him over to verify. When he confirmed the issue and showed her how to fix it, she smiled for the first time since they'd met. "Nice catch," she said. "I almost missed that." On Thursday, Marcus came to him with a question about handling edge cases in the retention calculation. They spent an hour working through the logic together, and by the end, Marcus was nodding thoughtfully instead of looking skeptical. "Okay," Marcus admitted, "that's actually a cleaner approach than what I was considering." Small victories, but victories nonetheless. Kyle, however, remained a constant thorn. He questioned every decision Alex made in team meetings, always phrased professionally but dripping with condescension. He submitted reports that technically met requirements but were formatted in ways that made Alex's job harder. And Alex started noticing mistakes in Kyle's work. Small things, easily fixed, but suspicious in their frequency. On Friday afternoon, Alex was reviewing the week's validation results when Miranda called him into her office. "How's it going?" she asked as he sat down. "Better than expected," Alex said honestly. "The team is starting to come around, most of them, anyway." "Kyle's giving you trouble." It wasn't a question. Of course Miranda knew. She probably knew everything that happened on her floor. "He's being professional," Alex said carefully. "Just barely." "Kyle's been with us for 5 years," Miranda said. "He's good at his job, he knows the systems, and he was absolutely convinced he was going to get promoted to lead Atlas. Then you showed up and took what he thought was his. He's not going to forgive that easily." "What do you want me to do about it?" "Manage him. You're his supervisor now. That means when he steps out of line, you address it. When his work isn't meeting standards, you document it. And if he becomes a genuine problem, you make the hard call." Alex absorbed that. The idea of having the authority to discipline or even fire someone felt surreal. "I've never managed people before," he admitted. "I know, but you're learning fast. Just remember, you're not here to be liked. You're here to make sure this project succeeds. Sometimes that means making decisions people resent." Miranda's expression softened slightly. "For what it's worth, I think you're doing well. Better than I expected, honestly. You're not letting the imposter syndrome paralyze you." "I have imposter syndrome constantly," Alex said. "Good. The day you stop questioning yourself is the day you become arrogant enough to miss the next critical error." She dismissed him with a wave. "Go home. Spend the weekend with your daughter. You've earned it." That weekend, Alex kept his promise to Lily. On Saturday morning, they took the subway to the Bronx Zoo. Lily pressed her face against the glass of every exhibit, shrieking with delight at the penguins, asking a million questions about the elephants. Insisting they visit the gift shop where Alex bought her a stuffed giraffe she immediately named Mr. Spots. "This is the best day ever," Lily said as they ate overpriced hot dogs on a bench overlooking the sea lion pool. "Are we rich now, Daddy?" Alex laughed, the sound surprising even himself. "We're not rich, sweetheart, but we're doing better." "Good," Lily said seriously, "because Mr. Carrots needs a friend and Mr. Spots is perfect." They stayed until closing, Lily falling asleep on the subway ride home with her new giraffe clutched tight. Alex carried her up the stairs to their apartment. Still the same one-bedroom with the broken heating, but he'd already started looking at better places, and tucked her into bed. His phone buzzed as he was washing dishes. A text from an unknown number that turned out to be Dr. Patterson. Saw your first week analytics report. Solid work. The team is talking less about your credentials and more about your results. That's progress. JP. Alex smiled at that, feeling some of the constant tension in his shoulders ease. Progress. Not acceptance yet, but progress. Monday of his second week started with an emergency. Alex arrived at 7:30 to find Jennifer already at her desk, looking stressed. We have a problem, she said immediately. The overnight batch process failed. Client retention scores for Drake's account didn't update. He's expecting his Monday morning report in 90 minutes, and we have nothing. Alex felt his stomach drop. This was exactly the kind of crisis that could destroy the fragile trust they'd been building. Show me the logs, he said. They spent the next hour tracing through system logs and error messages, identifying where the batch process had broken. It turned out to be a database timeout. The query was taking too long, hitting resource limits. A problem that had probably existed for weeks, but only became visible now that they were processing more data with the corrected model. We need to optimize this query, Alex said, pulling up the SQL code. And we need to do it in the next hour, or Drake's getting incomplete data. That's not enough time to properly test, Jennifer started. Then we test fast, Alex interrupted. Get Marcus and Olivia. I need their eyes on this. What followed was the most intense hour Alex had experienced since his 72-hour crisis. 4 of them crammed around his desk, rewriting the query, testing it against development data, catching errors, fixing them, testing again. Kyle showed up halfway through, saw what was happening, and actually joined in without being asked. At 8:45, with 15 minutes to spare, they deployed the optimized query to production. It ran in 12 minutes instead of timing out. The retention scores updated. The report generated successfully. Alex sent it to Drake at 8:58, 2 minutes before the deadline. Holy hell, Marcus said, slumping in his chair. That was too close. But we made it, Alex said. He looked around at his team, sweaty, exhausted, but wearing expressions of accomplishment. Good work, everyone, seriously. You too, boss, Jennifer said, and it was the first time anyone had called him that without sarcasm. Even Kyle nodded grudgingly. Nice catch on the query optimization. I wouldn't have thought to restructure it that way. It was the closest thing to a compliment Kyle had given him, and Alex chose to take it as progress. The crisis seemed to shift something in the team dynamic. Over the next week, the skepticism gradually gave way to something more like cautious cooperation. People started coming to Alex with questions instead of going around him. Jennifer invited him to lunch with some of the other team members. Marcus asked his opinion on a technical approach unprompted. Even Olivia thawed slightly, stopping by his office one afternoon to discuss a statistical methodology question that turned into an hour-long conversation about model validation approaches. She still looked at him like a curiosity, but the clinical detachment had been replaced by something resembling professional respect. You know, she said as she was leaving, I didn't think you'd last a week. I was wrong, for what it's worth. It's worth something, Alex said. Thanks. Kyle remained the holdout, professionally civil but personally distant, contributing to the team, but never quite part of it. Alex caught him having quiet conversations with Grant several times, conversations that stopped immediately when Alex appeared. He documented the pattern, but didn't act on it yet. Pick your battles, he reminded himself. 3 weeks in, Drake requested an in-person progress review. Alex spent 2 days preparing the presentation, walking through 3 weeks of validation results, showing consistent prediction accuracy with minimal variance. The new model was performing exactly as promised. Drake arrived on a Friday afternoon with his CFO in tow, the same duo who'd nearly ended the company a month ago. But this time the atmosphere was different, less hostile, more businesslike. Walk me through it, Drake said once they were settled in the conference room. Alex presented for 45 minutes, fielding questions, explaining methodologies, showing raw data when Drake's CFO asked for it. The interrogation was thorough and sometimes harsh, but Alex held his ground. He knew this model inside and out. He'd built it himself, validated every calculation, stress-tested every assumption. When he finished, Drake was silent for a long moment, studying the final slide showing prediction accuracy trending steady at 68%. It's not 91%, Drake said finally. No, sir. But it's honest, and it's stable. You can build strategy on it. Drake turned to his CFO. Your assessment. The CFO, a thin man with gray hair who'd barely spoken during the presentation, flipped through his notes. The methodology is sound, he said. The documentation is transparent. The accuracy claims are verifiable. This is what we should have had from the beginning. He looked at Alex. Good work, Mr. Rowan. Drake nodded slowly, then stood up and extended his hand to Alex. I'm officially satisfied with the remediation, he said. The contract stays active. Weekly reports for the next quarter, then we'll move to monthly. But I want you personally reviewing every report before it comes to me. Understood? Yes, sir, Alex said, shaking his hand. After Drake left, Alex found Miranda waiting outside the conference room. He's satisfied, Alex reported. I heard. Well done. She gestured for him to walk with her. We need to talk about next steps. They ended up in her office, the afternoon sun streaming through the windows, painting everything gold. You've proven yourself on Atlas, Miranda said, but I don't want you stuck managing one project forever. You have broader potential, so here's what I'm proposing. Stay as Atlas lead through the end of the year. Stabilize the system, train your team to operate independently, document everything. Then in January, I want to move you into a new role. What kind of role? Director of Analytics Quality. You'd oversee all our predictive models, not just Atlas. Make sure we never have another duplication error situation. Institute proper review processes, validation frameworks, accuracy standards. Build the quality control function this company should have had from the beginning. Alex stared at her, trying to process what she was offering. Director level, overseeing multiple teams, the kind of role that typically required 10 years of experience and an impressive pedigree. That's a significant promotion, he managed. You've earned a significant promotion, and before you start with the imposter syndrome, let me remind you, you saved this company. You rebuilt a critical system in 3 days. You've managed a skeptical team and turned them into believers. Those aren't lucky breaks. That's capability. Miranda leaned back in her chair. The question is whether you want it, because director level means longer hours, more politics, harder decisions. It means being responsible not just for your work, but for ensuring everyone else's work meets standards. It's not for everyone. Alex thought about Lily, about the promises he'd made to spend more time with her now that money wasn't so tight. He thought about the stress he'd felt over the past month, the constant pressure, the fear of making a mistake that would prove everyone right about him. Then he thought about that moment in the interview room when he'd spotted the error no one else could see, about the 72 hours of hell that had led him here, about the look on Lily's face when he'd taken her to the zoo. He'd fought too hard to get here to stop climbing now. I want it, Alex said. I'll take the role. Miranda smiled, genuine warmth breaking through her usual professional reserve. Then congratulations, Mr. Rowan. You've officially gone from rejected applicant to director track in exactly 1 month. I think that might be a company record. That evening, Alex picked up Lily from preschool and took her to their favorite cheap pizza place, the one with the red plastic booths and the jukebox that still played 80s music. Guess what? He said as they waited for their food. Daddy got more good news at work. More good news? Lily's eyes went wide. Are we super rich now? Alex laughed. Not super rich, but we're going to be okay, sweetheart. Better than okay. Can we get a house? Lily asked suddenly. With a yard? So I can have a swing set? The question hit Alex harder than it should have. A house. Something he'd stopped allowing himself to even dream about years ago. Maybe, he said carefully. Not right away, but maybe someday soon. Okay, Lily said, satisfied with that answer in the way only a 5-year-old could be. Then she grabbed a crayon and started drawing on the paper menu, humming to herself, completely secure in the knowledge that her daddy could do anything. Alex watched her draw. Another superhero picture, another version of Daddy with a cape, and felt something settle in his chest. Not the absence of fear, because he was still terrified of screwing this up, but a quiet confidence that whatever came next, he could handle it. He'd survived rejection and sabotage and 72 hours of impossible deadlines. He'd proven himself to Drake, to Miranda, to a team that had every reason to want him gone. He'd gone from warehouse worker to director track in 4 weeks. The past month had been the hardest of his life, and also the best. His phone buzzed, A text from Jennifer. Team drinks tomorrow night to celebrate the Drake approval. You coming? Alex hesitated for only a moment before responding, I'll be there, because that's what directors did. They showed up. They were part of the team, even when it was uncomfortable. They earned respect not just through competence, but through presence. Lily finished her drawing and pushed it across the table. This one showed Daddy standing on top of a tall building with the sun shining overhead and the words "Best Daddy Ever" written in careful, crooked letters. For your office, she said proudly, so everyone knows you're the best. Alex took the drawing, his throat tight. Thank you, sweetheart. I'll put it right on my desk. And he would, right next to his nameplate and his computer, where he could see it every day when things got hard. A reminder of why he'd fought so desperately to get here, and who he was really working for. The pizza arrived, and they ate together in comfortable silence, Lily swinging her legs under the table, Alex letting himself feel the impossible reality of where he was. 1 month ago, he'd been a nobody, a rejected applicant with no prospects and no future beyond warehouse work and worry. Now he was lead data engineer, soon to be director, a man with a future, and a daughter who believed he could do anything. The transformation wasn't complete. There would be more battles ahead, more people to prove himself to, more moments of crippling doubt. But for tonight, in this cheap pizza place with his daughter drawing superhero pictures, Alex Rowan allowed himself to believe he'd actually made it, and that maybe, just maybe, he deserved to be here after all. The team drinks turned out to be at an upscale bar 3 blocks from the office, the kind of place with exposed brick walls and craft cocktails that cost more than Alex used to spend on groceries for a week. He showed up 20 minutes late because the babysitter had been delayed, walking in to find his team already gathered around a high-top table near the back. Jennifer saw him first and waved him over. There he is. We were starting to think you'd bailed. Just had to get my daughter settled, Alex said, sliding onto one of the bar stools. The group had grown beyond just his immediate team. He recognized people from other departments, including Dr. Patterson, who raised her glass in greeting. First round's on Drake's approval, Marcus announced, pushing a beer toward Alex, to not getting sued into oblivion. They clinked glasses, and Alex took a sip of the craft IPA that probably cost $12. It tasted like victory and belonging and still felt slightly unreal. The conversation flowed easily, shop talk mixed with weekend plans and office gossip. Alex found himself relaxing in a way he hadn't since starting at Cole and Stratton, the constant vigilance finally easing. These people weren't looking for reasons to doubt him anymore. They were just colleagues, sharing drinks after a hard month. Kyle showed up 40 minutes in, his arrival changing the atmosphere subtly. He ordered a whiskey neat and positioned himself at the edge of the group, participating but separate. Alex caught him watching with an expression that was hard to read. Not hostile exactly, but not friendly either. So what's next for Project Atlas? One of the other engineers asked Alex. Drake's satisfied, the model's stable. Do we just maintain it now? Pretty much, Alex said. Continue validation testing. Optimize performance where we can, but the heavy lifting is done. Miranda wants us to start documenting the rebuild process so we can apply the same methodology to other systems. Makes sense, Jennifer said. Half our predictive models probably have similar issues we just haven't caught yet. Which is why she's creating a new quality control role, Dr. Patterson added, and Alex realized Miranda must have already been spreading the word. Someone to oversee all our analytics and make sure we're not making the same mistakes. Who's getting that position? Marcus asked, and several people turned to look at Alex. It's not official yet, Alex said carefully, not wanting to announce something that might still fall through. But it's you, right? Jennifer pressed. I mean, it would be insane if it wasn't you. Before Alex could answer, Kyle spoke up from his position at the edge of the group. It's a director-level role, he said quietly, overseeing multiple teams. That's a big jump for someone who's been here a month. The table went quiet. Alex felt everyone's eyes shifting between him and Kyle, the tension suddenly thick enough to cut. You're right, Alex said evenly. It is a big jump, but the job isn't about time served. It's about making sure we never put out flawed analytics again, and I'm the one who caught the flaw everyone else missed. Once, Kyle said, his voice harder now, you caught one error. That doesn't make you qualified to oversee the entire analytics division. Kyle, Jennifer started, but Alex held up a hand. No, it's fair, he said, setting down his beer and turning to face Kyle directly. You want to say what you've been thinking for a month? Go ahead, clear the air. Kyle's jaw tightened. For a moment, Alex thought he might back down, retreat into professional civility, but whatever he'd been holding back for weeks finally broke through. Fine. You want honesty? I've been here 5 years, 5 years of working nights and weekends, of publishing papers, of building my reputation. I was supposed to lead Atlas. Everyone knew it. Then you show up, no degree, no experience, no track record, and Miranda hands you everything I earned. And now you're getting promoted again? To a role I've been working toward for years? The words hung in the air like smoke. No one moved. No one spoke. Alex could feel the entire table holding its breath. You're right, Alex said quietly. You did earn it. You put in the time, built the credentials, followed all the rules, and the system should have rewarded that. But it didn't. And that's not fair to you. Kyle blinked, clearly not expecting agreement. But here's what you need to understand, Alex continued. I didn't take anything from you. Miranda didn't give me your job. She gave me an impossible task that nobody else could complete. And I completed it. Not because I'm smarter than you or better than you, but because I saw something you didn't. And if our positions were reversed, if you'd been the one to spot the flaw and fix it, I'd be standing where you are right now, feeling exactly what you're feeling. He paused, making sure Kyle was really hearing him. I'm not your enemy. I'm not here to steal opportunities or prove anyone wrong. I'm here because I'm good at this work, and my daughter needs me to be. You can spend the rest of your career resenting me for that, or you can accept that we're on the same team and start acting like it. Your choice. The silence stretched for what felt like an eternity. Kyle's expression cycled through anger and frustration, and something that might have been grudging respect before finally settling into resignation. You're right, he said finally, the admission clearly costing him. I've been an ass. The sabotage, the attitude, the constant undermining, that was unprofessional. And you've handled it better than I would have. He took a drink of his whiskey, then met Alex's eyes. I'm not saying we're suddenly best friends, but I can work with you. Actually work with you, not just pretend to while hoping you fail. That's all I'm asking, Alex said, and he meant it. The tension broke like a fever. Conversation resumed, awkward at first, but gradually finding its rhythm again. Kyle didn't become warm or friendly, but he stopped being hostile, and that was enough. Progress came in small increments. An hour later, as people started drifting away to catch trains or meet other obligations, Dr. Patterson pulled Alex aside. That was well handled, she said, with Kyle. A lot of people would have gotten defensive or made it worse. I've had a lot of practice de-escalating hostile situations, Alex said. Warehouse work teaches you that. Plus, I understood where he was coming from. The system did screw him. The system screws everyone eventually, Dr. Patterson said. Some people just get screwed in different ways, but you're changing that system now, that director role. You'll have real influence over how this company operates. Use it well. She left with a wave, and Alex found himself alone at the bar, nursing the last of his beer and thinking about her words. Changing the system. Real influence. A month ago, he'd been invisible. Now people were talking about him shaping company policy. The bartender approached, a young woman with pink hair and impressive tattoo sleeves. Another round? She asked. Just the check, Alex said. He pulled out his wallet, still getting used to the fact that he could afford to pay for drinks without checking his account balance first. The walk to the subway took him past the Cole and Stratton building, lit up against the night sky like a monument. Alex stopped on the sidewalk, looking up at the 12th floor where his office was, where his nameplate hung on the door, where Lily's superhero drawing was taped to his desk. His phone buzzed. A text from Ms. Patterson, the babysitter. Lily's asleep. She asked me to tell you that she's proud of you. Her words, not mine. This kid of yours is something special. Alex smiled at that, his eyes burning slightly. Yeah, she was special. And she was the reason for all of this. Every brutal hour of the past month, every moment of doubt and fear and desperate determination. He'd done it for her. To give her a life where she didn't have to worry about whether they could afford new shoes, where her dreams weren't limited by their bank account. He made it home by 11, paid Ms. Patterson double the usual rate because he could afford to now, and slipped quietly into Lily's room. She was curled up in her small bed, Mr. Carrots on one side and the new Mr. Spots giraffe on the other, her face peaceful in sleep. Alex knelt beside her bed, brushing hair from her forehead. "We made it, sweetheart," he whispered. "We actually made it." She didn't wake up, just sighed contentedly and burrowed deeper into her blankets. Alex stayed there for another minute, watching her breathe, before finally forcing himself to get up and go to bed. The next few months blurred together in a pattern of steady progress and incremental victories. Alex continued leading the Atlas team through the end of the year, documenting processes and training team members to operate independently. The relationship with Kyle never became warm, but it became workable. Professional respect, if not friendship. In November, Miranda made his promotion official. Director of Analytics Quality, effective January 1st. The announcement came with a salary bump to $145,000, an actual office with windows that showed the city instead of a ventilation shaft, and the kind of business cards that felt substantial in his hand. Alex stood in his new office on his first day as director, looking out over Manhattan as the morning sun painted everything gold. The view reminded him of that moment 4 months ago when he'd been standing in an interview room being rejected, when his entire future had been measured in how many more years he could survive at the warehouse. Now he had a team of 8 people reporting to him. He had authority over quality standards for every predictive model Cole and Stratton built. He had a voice in strategy meetings where decisions worth millions of dollars were made. The imposter syndrome still hit him sometimes, usually late at night when he was alone with his thoughts. The voice that whispered he didn't belong here, that his lack of credentials would eventually catch up with him, that someone would figure out he was just pretending to know what he was doing. But those moments were getting rarer, because every day brought more evidence that he did belong here, that his insights were valuable, his judgment sound, his leadership effective. He wasn't pretending anymore, he was just doing the work. In February, Samuel Drake requested a meeting, not to review Atlas metrics, but to discuss expanding the partnership. He wanted Cole and Stratton to build predictive models for 3 other divisions of his company, and he wanted Alex personally overseeing the quality control. "I trust your work," Drake said bluntly during the pitch meeting. "You told me the truth when it would have been easier to lie. You fixed a mess that could have destroyed both our companies. That kind of integrity is rare. I want more of it." The expanded contract was worth $42 million over 3 years. Miranda nearly cried during the signing, though she'd deny it if anyone asked. Grant and Harris, who'd once tried to sabotage Alex, now treated him with wary respect. Even Olivia had become something resembling a friend, occasionally stopping by his office to debate statistical methodologies over coffee. By March, Alex and Lily had moved into a 2-bedroom apartment in a better neighborhood. Nothing fancy, but the heating worked, the neighbors were quiet, and Lily had her own room for the first time in her life. She'd helped pick out the paint color, purple, her favorite, and Alex had spent a weekend building her a bookshelf for the growing collection of books they could finally afford. "Daddy, is this really ours?" Lily had asked on moving day, spinning in circles in her new room. "We get to stay here?" "We get to stay here," Alex confirmed, his throat tight. "Forever?" "As long as we want, sweetheart." She'd hugged him so hard his ribs hurt, and Alex had decided that feeling was worth every brutal hour of the past 6 months. One Saturday in April, Alex took Lily to the park near their new apartment. The playground was nicer than the ones they'd used before. Newer equipment, softer ground cover, the kind of place where families came on purpose rather than out of necessity. Lily was on the swings when Alex heard a familiar voice. "Mr. Rowan, is that you?" He turned to find Dr. Patterson approaching with a small boy in tow, presumably her son. "Dr. Patterson," Alex said warmly, "what are you doing in this neighborhood?" "I live 2 blocks away. Have for years. You're the newcomer here." She smiled. "Nice area. Significantly upgraded from where you mentioned living before." "Significantly," Alex agreed, watching Lily pump her legs to swing higher. "Better schools, too. That was the main factor." They stood in comfortable silence for a moment, watching their kids play. Then Dr. Patterson spoke quietly.
I heard you implemented new validation protocols across all our predictive models. 3 errors caught in the past month that would have made it to clients under the old system. 4, actually, Alex corrected. The 4th was minor, but still wrong. We fixed it before deployment. See, that's the difference. Under the old system, minor errors got ignored because fixing them was inconvenient. Now they get fixed because they're wrong. That cultural shift, that's your doing. Alex shrugged, uncomfortable with the praise. Just doing the job. No, you're changing how we do the job. There's a difference. She paused, then added, I'm glad Miranda took a chance on you. I'm glad I helped, even in small ways. You've made us all better. Thank you, Alex managed. That means a lot. Dr. Patterson's son called for her and she excused herself with a wave. Alex settled onto a bench, watching Lily play, feeling the spring sunshine warm on his face. His phone buzzed, an email from Miranda with the subject line, Board presentation. Your input needed. Alex opened it to find a draft proposal for expanding the Analytics Quality Division, creating a formal framework for validation and review across all company projects. Miranda wanted his thoughts before presenting it to the board next month. She was asking his opinion on company strategy. Him, the guy who'd been rejected at the interview 6 months ago. He typed out a response with suggestions and refinements, sent it off, and put his phone away. There would be more emails, more meetings, more challenges. But right now, in this moment, he could just be dad, watching his daughter play in the good neighborhood with the nice playground, knowing they were safe and stable and okay. Daddy, Lily called from the top of the slide. Watch this! She went down face first, laughing the whole way, and Alex's heart clenched with the kind of fierce protective love that still surprised him with its intensity. That was amazing, he called back, and she beamed with pride before running to do it again. In May, Cole and Stratton held their annual company awards ceremony. It was a formal affair at a hotel ballroom, employees dressed in cocktail attire, catered dinner, and open bar. Alex had brought Lily as his +1 since she'd begged to see where Daddy worked, and she sat next to him in her best dress, a new one they'd bought specifically for tonight, looking around with wide eyes at the fancy setting. Is this where all the important people are? She whispered. This is where all the people who work hard are, Alex corrected gently. Everyone here is important. Miranda took the stage as dinner finished, thanking various teams for their contributions over the year. Alex was only half listening, helping Lily with her dessert, when he heard his name. And finally, I want to recognize someone who joined us in an unconventional way. Alex Rowan came to us 6 months ago for an interview we were planning to reject. Instead, he saved our company. He rebuilt a critical system in 72 hours under conditions that would have broken most people. He's since implemented quality standards that have prevented millions in potential losses. Alex, come up here. Alex froze, his spoon halfway to his mouth. Around him, people were applauding. Lily was bouncing in her seat with excitement. Go, Daddy, go! He made his way to the stage on legs that felt unsteady, accepting a crystal award from Miranda that was engraved with his name and the words, Excellence in Analytics. Say something, Miranda murmured, stepping back from the microphone. Alex looked out at the room full of people. His colleagues now, his team, the company he'd saved and that had saved him in return. He spotted Jennifer and Marcus at a table near the front, both grinning, Dr. Patterson giving him a thumbs up. Even Kyle sitting in the back, nodding with what looked like genuine respect. 6 months ago, Alex said, his voice carrying through the microphone, I was a single dad working night shifts at a warehouse, applying to jobs that never called back. I came here desperate and terrified and convinced I'd be rejected like always. And I was rejected, until the universe gave me a chance to prove that credentials don't define capability. He paused, finding Lily in the crowd. She was standing on her chair now, waving at him. I want to thank Miranda for seeing past what I lacked and focusing on what I could do. I want to thank my team for eventually accepting a leader they had every reason to resent. But mostly, I want to thank my daughter Lily, who believed I was a hero even when I was nobody. She's why I fought so hard. She's why I'm here. The applause when he finished was genuine and sustained. Alex made his way back to his seat,
where Lily launched herself at him in a hug that nearly knocked him over. "You won," she said gleefully. "I knew you would." "I didn't win, sweetheart. This isn't a competition." "Yes, it is," Lily said with 5-year-old certainty. "And you won. You're the best." Alex hugged her tight, the crystal award awkward between them, and decided maybe she was right. Maybe he had won, not against anyone else, but against the version of himself who thought this kind of success was impossible for people like him. That night, after Lily was asleep, Alex sat in his living room, his real living room, in an apartment with working heat and quiet neighbors, and looked at the award on his coffee table. The crystal caught the light, refracting it into tiny rainbows across the ceiling. His phone buzzed, a text from a number he didn't recognize at first until he saw the name, Grant Hutchins. "Congratulations on the award. You've proven me wrong. That takes some doing." "Grant?" Alex stared at the message for a long moment. It wasn't an apology exactly, but from Grant, it might be as close as he'd ever get. He typed back a simple response. "Thanks. Appreciate it." Another message came through, this one from Miranda. "Dinner next week? Want to discuss expansion plans for your division, and I'm buying. You've earned it." Alex smiled at that. Dinner with the CEO to discuss expansion plans. 6 months ago, he couldn't have imagined it. Now it was just another Tuesday. He responded with confirmation, then set his phone aside and allowed himself to just sit in the quiet of his new life. No warehouse shift to prepare for, no desperation keeping him awake, no crushing fear that one emergency would destroy everything. Just peace. Hard-won, earned through 72 hours of hell and 6 months of proving himself daily, but peace nonetheless. The summer passed in a blur of continued success. Alex's quality control division caught error after error, preventing the kind of catastrophic failure that had nearly ended Cole & Stratton. His reputation in the industry grew. Other analytics firms started reaching out, asking if he'd consult or speak at conferences. He declined most of them, focusing on his work and his daughter. But the offers kept coming. In August, Drake called him directly, not through official channels, but on his personal cell. "Rowan, I have a proposition for you," Drake said without preamble. "I'm launching a new subsidiary focused on predictive analytics for manufacturing. I want you to run it." Alex nearly dropped his phone. What?" "Chief Analytics Officer, your own team, your own budget, equity stake in the company. Build it from the ground up, however you think is right. I trust your judgment." "Mr. Drake, I'm honored, but I'm happy at Cole & Stratton. I'll double your salary, plus stock options that could be worth millions if we succeed. Think about it. Don't give me an answer now, but think about it." The call ended before Alex could respond. He sat in his office, staring at his phone, trying to process what had just happened. Chief Analytics Officer, his own company, millions in potential earnings. It was everything he'd never dared dream about, and it terrified him. That night, after putting Lily to bed, Alex called the one person whose advice he trusted without question, Miranda. "He called you directly?" she asked after he explained. "That's very Drake, poaching my director by making an offer I can't match." "I'm not taking it," Alex said immediately. I don't think I'm taking it. Should I be taking it?" Miranda was quiet for a moment. "That's not a question I can answer for you, but I'll tell you this. 6 months ago, you were afraid you weren't qualified to be a junior analyst. Now you're being offered a C-suite position at a startup. That should tell you something about how far you've come. Or how good Drake is at sales pitches." "Alex?" Her voice was firm. "Stop underselling yourself. You've earned every opportunity that's come your way. If you want to take Drake's offer, I'll be disappointed, but I'll understand. If you want to stay here, I'll be thrilled, and we'll talk about expanding your role even further. But either way, stop acting like you don't deserve good things. You do." After they hung up, Alex sat in the dark of his living room for a long time, thinking. The offer was incredible. Life-changing money. The chance to build something from nothing, the way Miranda had built Cole & Stratton. But it would also mean longer hours, more travel, more time away from Lily, and he'd be starting over in some ways. New company, new team, new challenges. Here at Cole & Stratton, he had stability. He had a team that respected him, a role he understood, a company that had given him a chance when no one else would. In the end, the decision came down to one simple question. What kind of life did he want for Lily? The next morning, Alex called Drake back. I appreciate the offer, Mr. Drake, more than I can express, but I'm going to stay at Cole & Stratton. They took a chance on me when I was nobody. I owe them loyalty. There was a pause on the line. Then Drake laughed, genuinely amused. Loyalty. In this business, that's rare. All right, Rowan, I respect your decision, but the offer stands if you ever change your mind. You're going to do great things. I just won't be the one benefiting from them. After that call, Alex went straight to Miranda's office. I'm staying, he told her. I know, Drake called me after you turned him down. He was actually impressed that you chose loyalty over money. She smiled. So let's talk about making sure you don't regret that choice. How do you feel about senior director? Broader scope? Another salary bump? More influence over company strategy? By the time Alex left her office an hour later, he had a new title, $160,000 in annual salary and a seat in strategic planning meetings. He also had something more valuable, confirmation that choosing stability and loyalty over flashy opportunities had been the right call. September brought Lily's first day of first grade. Alex took the morning off to walk her to school, watching her skip ahead with her new backpack, one she'd picked out herself, no longer limited to whatever the donation bin offered. Are you nervous? He asked as they approached the school building. Nope, Lily said confidently. I'm excited. Mrs. Chen says first grade is when real learning happens. You've been doing real learning since you were born, sweetheart. I know, but now it's official real learning. She stopped at the school steps and turned back to him. Daddy, you have to go to work now. I can walk you to your classroom. I'm a big kid now. I can walk myself. But she hugged him tight first, her small arms around his waist. Love you, Daddy. Have a good day at your important job. Love you too, sweetheart. Have a good day at your important school. He watched her walk into the building, her new backpack almost as big as she was, her confidence unshakable. And he realized that this, giving her the security to be confident, to not worry about money or stability, was what everything had been for. The fall continued with steady success. Alex's division prevented 19 separate errors from reaching clients, saved the company an estimated $12 million in potential losses, and established quality standards that became industry benchmarks. He was invited to speak at 3 conferences, published an article in a major analytics journal, and started getting recognized at industry events. You're becoming famous, Jennifer teased after one conference where people kept approaching him for advice. I'm becoming visible, Alex corrected. There's a difference. Is there, though? Because I'm pretty sure you just turned down 2 job offers during lunch. 3, actually, but I like where I am. And he did. The imposter syndrome still surfaced occasionally, but it was manageable now. He'd proven himself too many times to doubt his capabilities. He belonged here. He'd earned his place. In November, Alex took Lily on a trip, their first real vacation. 5 days at Disney World, staying at a resort hotel with a pool and room service and tickets to every park. It cost more than he used to make in 3 months. But watching Lily meet Mickey Mouse, ride Space Mountain 5 times in a row, and eat ice cream for breakfast because vacation rules were different, that was worth every penny. This is the best week of my whole life, Lily announced on their last night, sitting on the balcony watching the fireworks explode over Cinderella's castle. Mine too, sweetheart, Alex said, and meant it. They flew home to New York in early December, Lily clutching a stuffed Minnie Mouse and talking non-stop about everything they'd seen. Alex listened to her chatter with a contentment he'd never felt before. This was what success looked like. Not awards or titles or salary numbers, but the ability to give his daughter experiences she'd remember forever. The Monday after they returned, Miranda called Alex into her office. We need to talk about your future here, she said, gesturing for him to sit. Alex felt a flutter of anxiety. Is something wrong? The opposite. The board is extremely impressed with your work. Your division has become the gold standard for quality control in our industry, so they've asked me to propose something. She pulled out a document and slid it across her desk. Vice President of Analytics Operations. You'd oversee not just quality control, but all analytics project management, resource allocation, strategic planning. It's essentially the number 2 position under me for the entire analytics side of the company. Alex stared at the job description, his brain struggling to process what he was reading. VP, number 2 position. the kind of role that typically required 20 years of experience and an impressive pedigree. Miranda, I've been here less than a year. 11 months, she corrected, in which you've saved the company, rebuilt a critical system, implemented quality standards that prevented millions in losses, built a reputation that has clients specifically requesting you by name, and turned down multiple job offers to stay loyal to us. You've earned this, Alex. Stop acting like you haven't. Can I think about it? Alex asked, his voice barely above a whisper. You have until January to decide. The promotion would be effective February 1st. But Alex? She leaned forward. I hope you say yes. You've already proven you can do this job. Now it's just about accepting that you deserve it. That evening, Alex sat Lily down after dinner for a serious conversation. Sweetheart, I need to talk to you about something important. My boss offered me a big promotion at work. That's good, Lily said immediately. More money for Disney World. Alex smiled despite his nervousness. Maybe, but it would also mean I'd have to work more hours sometimes. I might not always be able to pick you up from school or come to every class event. Lily was quiet for a moment, unusually serious for a 6-year-old. Would you be happy? She asked. Yes, I think I would be. Then do it, Lily said simply. You're always telling me to try hard things even when they're scary. You should try too. The wisdom of children, Alex thought. Sometimes it took a 6-year-old to point out the obvious. You're right, he said. Thank you, sweetheart. You're pretty smart, you know that? I know, Lily said with complete confidence. I get it from you. The next morning, Alex walked into Miranda's office and accepted the promotion. The holiday season arrived with its usual chaos. Cole and Stratton threw a company Christmas party at the same hotel where the award ceremony had been held. And this time, Alex felt like he actually belonged. People sought him out to talk shop, to ask his opinion, to just chat. He was no longer the outsider trying to prove himself. He was part of the fabric of the company. On Christmas morning, Alex woke up to find Lily already awake, sitting by their tree. A real tree this year, not the small plastic one they'd used in the old apartment. Daddy, Santa came! She'd believed in Santa for the first time this year, secure enough in her stability to trust in magic. Alex had spent a fortune on presents, making up for years of having to choose just one small gift. The look on her face as she opened each one was worth more than any salary increase. After the present frenzy, after breakfast and the call to his parents, who still couldn't quite believe what had happened to their son, Alex and Lily settled on the couch together. Did you make a wish? Lily asked, referring to the tradition he'd started where they each made a silent wish on Christmas morning. I did. What was it? Can't tell you. Then it won't come true. That's a birthday candle rule, not a Christmas rule, Lily argued. It's both. But I'll tell you this much. My wish already came true. I'm looking at it. Lily giggled and snuggled closer. That's cheesy, Daddy. I know, but it's true. As they sat there watching the Christmas tree lights twinkle, Alex thought about where he'd been a year ago. Desperate, rejected, convinced his life would never be more than a cycle of warehouse shifts and worry. He'd walked into that interview room expecting another rejection, another door slammed in his face. Instead, the universe had given him one chance, 30 seconds to prove his value, 72 hours to prove his capability, 11 months to prove he belonged. And he'd taken that chance and built a life he'd never imagined possible. His phone buzzed, a text from Miranda. Merry Christmas, Alex. Looking forward to working with you as VP in the new year. You've come a long way from that interview room. M. Alex smiled and typed back, Merry Christmas. Thank you for taking a chance on me. Changed my life. The response came immediately. You changed your own life. I just gave you the opportunity. There's a difference. Maybe there was. Maybe success was part opportunity and part determination, part luck and part skill. Maybe it didn't matter how you got there, only what you did once you arrived. New Year's Eve arrived cold and clear. Alex had been invited to a party with colleagues, but he chose to stay home with Lily instead. They made popcorn and watched movies, and at midnight, they went out onto their balcony to watch the fireworks over the city. What's your New Year's resolution, Daddy? Lily asked as the sky exploded in color. to be worthy of everything I've been given, Alex said quietly.
You already are, Lily said with absolute certainty. Then she added, Mine is to learn to ride a bike without training wheels. Alex laughed, pulling her close. That's a good goal, sweetheart. We'll work on it together. As the fireworks continued, painting the Manhattan sky in brilliant colors, Alex allowed himself to feel the full weight of gratitude for how far they'd come. From rejected applicant to VP in less than a year, from struggling single dad to stable provider, from nobody to somebody. But more than any title or salary, he was grateful for the simple fact that Lily was safe and happy and secure. That she could make wishes and set goals without the shadow of poverty hanging over them. That she believed in her daddy not because he was desperate for her approval, but because he'd proven himself worthy of her faith. The new year started with Alex's transition into his VP role.
It came with an office twice the size of his previous one, a salary that made him dizzy when he looked at the number, and responsibilities that sometimes kept him awake at night. But it also came with the authority to shape how Cole and Stratton operated, to implement the kind of quality-first culture that would prevent future disasters. In February, exactly 1 year after that infamous 72-hour deadline, Miranda called an all-hands meeting to announce the company's annual results. Revenue was up 40%. Client satisfaction scores had reached record highs. Employee retention had improved significantly. And none of this would have been possible without one person's contribution, Miranda said, and Alex knew what was coming before she said his name. Alex Rowan joined us in an unconventional way. He's risen through the ranks faster than anyone in company history, and he's fundamentally changed how we approach our work. Alex, come up here. Alex made his way to the front of the room for what felt like the 100th time, but it still hadn't gotten comfortable. The crowd applauded, genuine, sustained, no longer tinged with skepticism or resentment. I don't have a speech prepared, Alex admitted into the microphone, but I want to say something to anyone here who feels like they don't belong, who thinks their background disqualifies them, who's been told they're not good enough. You are good enough. Your credentials don't define your capabilities. Your past doesn't limit your future. All you need is one chance and the refusal to waste it. The applause when he finished was the loudest he'd ever heard. That evening, Alex left the office at a reasonable hour for once and picked up Lily from her after-school program. On a whim, he suggested they go to the zoo, the same zoo they'd visited a year ago when it had felt like an unimaginable luxury. They walked through the exhibits hand in hand, Lily chattering about her day at school, Alex only half listening because he was too busy feeling grateful for this moment, for this life, for the chance he'd been given and the determination that had carried him through. "Daddy, look!" Lily pointed at the penguin exhibit where the birds were diving and playing. "Remember when we came here before and it was the best day ever?" "I remember." "Every day is the best day ever now," Lily said matter-of-factly, "because you're not worried anymore. I can tell." Alex knelt down to her level, struck by her perception. "You're right," he said. "I'm not worried anymore. We're okay now. We're more than okay." "I know," Lily said, hugging him. "We're awesome." They stayed at the zoo until closing, then went to a nice restaurant for dinner. Not the cheap pizza place they used to frequent, but a real restaurant with cloth napkins and a children's menu that didn't just have chicken fingers. Lily ordered pasta and ate like a proper lady, using her napkin and saying please and thank you to the waiter. After dinner, as they walked home through the cooling evening air, Lily looked up at the sky and said, "The stars are pretty tonight." "They are," Alex agreed, though the light pollution of Manhattan made only the brightest visible. "Do you think the stars know how hard you work to get the good job?" Alex smiled at the question, so perfectly innocent and profound in the way only children could manage. "I don't know, sweetheart, but I know you know. And that's what matters." They made it home, and Alex helped Lily with her homework, first-grade math that was actually pretty challenging, then read her 3 bedtime stories instead of the usual one, because why not? They had time now. After she fell asleep, Alex stood in her doorway watching her breathe, Mr. Carrots and Mr. Spots arranged carefully on either side of her pillow. This was what success looked like in its purest form, not awards or titles or salary increases, but the peace of knowing his daughter was safe and loved and could dream without fear. His phone buzzed one last time, An email from Samuel Drake with the subject line, "Congratulations." Alex opened it to find a simple message. "Heard about your VP promotion. Well deserved. You took a company that was failing me and turned it into one I trust completely. That's leadership. Proud to work with you. SD." Alex read the message 3 times, then set his phone aside and allowed himself a moment of pure, unfiltered pride. He'd done it. Against every odd, despite every obstacle, through doubt and sabotage and his own crushing imposter syndrome. He'd done it. The rejected applicant had become vice president. The warehouse worker had become a leader. The struggling single dad had become someone his daughter could be proud of. More than a year had passed since that interview room rejection, since the moment when his life had balanced on a knife's edge between failure and opportunity. A year of proving himself daily, of fighting for every inch of respect, of refusing to accept that his background defined his limits. Now, standing in his daughter's doorway in their safe apartment in the good neighborhood, Alex Rowan understood something fundamental. Potential wasn't granted by degrees or pedigree. It was proven in moments when the world expected you to fail and you succeeded anyway. He'd been nobody. He'd become somebody. And most importantly, he'd shown his daughter that transformation was possible. That was worth more than any salary, any title, any measure of success the world could offer. Alex turned off the light, closed Lily's door gently, and walked to his own room. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new responsibilities, new opportunities to prove himself. But tonight, he could rest in the knowledge that he and Lily were stepping into a future they deserved. The impossible had become possible. The dream had become reality. And somewhere in the cosmos, maybe the stars really did know how hard he'd worked. But whether they knew or not didn't matter, because Alex Rowan knew, and Lily knew. And that was enough.